Ms. Drummond?
Here.
Dr. Selcraig? Here. Mr. Klayman?
Here.
Mr. Birch?
Here.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Honored to be here.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Here.
Mr. Starr?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Coffey, if you could please lead us in the pledge. Next on the agenda, we have minutes from September 16, 2008. Is there a motion? Punch your button, Mr. Coffey. Moved by Coffey and seconded by Johnston.
Mr. Chairman, I'll need to abstain. I was not present for the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, line 8, where it starts at she, that needs to be revised to read the following. She advised the body that the committee meeting agenda would include the 2009 budget process and discussion on the new method for vacancy factor. She also reminded the body that the resolution regarding policy guidelines for labor negotiations cannot be revised until negotiations have ended, and the committee will look at revisions at that point. Thank you.
Is it writing?
I believe she's got it in writing, and I believe the process they will have the clerk's office confirm that that amendment is consistent with the record. Is there any opposition to that modification, subject to confirmation through the clerk's office? Right. I see no opposition to that modification, subject to confirmation through the clerk's office. Any other modifications to the minutes of September 16, 2008?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Drummond.
Thank you. On page 8, line 30, this was a long, involved discussion on connexes, and I'm trying to recall what Mr. Coffey was responding to that I said. Page 8, line 30. It says Mr. Coffey responded to Ms. Drummond, and I'm not sure what he was responding to, although we... Yeah, you're missing lights on this side. Actually, I don't think Mr. Coffey could possibly remember, and I would suggest that the recording be listened to a little more carefully to find out what that was.
All right, so the request is at line 30 on page 8 that the clerk's office review the tape to confirm the accuracy of essentially lines 30 through 33.
Yeah, because I'm not finding where I addressed the issue prior to that statement. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or corrections as to the September 16 minutes? I don't hear and see anything. Subject to those two queries, which will be confirmed by the clerk, is there any opposition to approval of the September 16 minutes, noting that Mr. Starr will be abstaining from the vote? Hearing and seeing none, those minutes are approved as modified. Next, we have the mayor's report. I understand the mayor is traveling out of city and is unable to participate tonight. Assembly chair's report, there's two items. First, in terms of scheduling, our schedule has noted that we had reserved time this Friday for work sessions on budget-related matters from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock this Friday, and after discussions both with the administration and with members of the Assembly, we are scheduling from 1 to 2 o'clock a work session that will be looking at bonds. We have 2 school bonds that are on the agenda tonight that are for introduction that we'll be making decisions on October 28th. And because bonding for $90 million in the present market is something that is fairly described as a subject of great interest both locally and nationally. We're going to have a work session. We're going to learn a lot more about the bond proposals and where the city sits as a bonding authority within the financial markets in today's economy. So that's from 1 to 2, and then Anchorage Project Access, which has some money in the proposed budget, is going to give us an update on the kind of work they've been doing and how they've been doing since they last appeared before this body at budget cycle last year at this time. So from 2 to 3, there'll be an update from Project Access. And then the second matter I just wanted to note, on Saturday morning, former Justice Alan Compton died, I believe, in his sleep. Justice Compton served many years on the Alaska Supreme Court, and in that time was involved in many decisions that directly affected this municipality and our state, and his service to our state and to our community was long and important, and I think it's time we should take time to recognize the passing of people who have made those contributions. So I wanted to note Justice Compton's contributions over the years. That brings us next to committee reports, and I will start on the right side at this time, Mr. Starr.
I have no report.
Mr. Gutierrez, Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, the Public Safety Committee met last week, heard from the Animal Care and Control Advisory Board regarding dangerous domestic animals, and there is some work underway in that arena with the Department of Health and Human Services, and we'll be working cooperatively with them and keeping an eye on that, and hopefully we'll be bringing something to this body at some point in the future. Heard some very interesting alternatives and things that other cities have done, from breed-specific laws to general education for animal owners. Also heard from several folks regarding drug use and drug addiction in the city of Anchorage and the state of Alaska, and it's sort of a flashback these days. It kind of seems like everything old is new again, and heroin is not only on the rise, but is our biggest drug problem at the moment, and is just appalling and nasty stuff. And we have a request for a resolution from State Senator Johnny Ellis, who is trying to get more money in the state budget for drug treatment in the state, and there's some work that needs to be done on that particular resolution. He's asked for a resolution of support from the Assembly. It's not ready to be brought forward to the body yet, but hopefully will at our next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. Ms. Gray Jackson, Budget and Audit. Or not Budget and Audit, Budget and Finance. I'll get it straight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last Friday, after our work session on the budget, the chair distributed on my behalf the 2009 budget process and also worksheets for both the operating and capital budgets to help you organizing your budget amendments before they're submitted, and they were also emailed to you by the clerk. And as I mentioned to Mr. Starr on Friday, if any of you have any issues understanding particular aspects of the budget, for example, funds, revenues, IGCs, and so forth, please call on me because I'm knowledgeable and I'm happy to assist my colleagues. In addition, the Budget and Finance Committee will be having a meeting scheduled for Thursday at noon in the Assembly Conference Room, and the agenda basically is going to review the schedule to determine if we need to make any necessary revisions, and also to review any amendments that may be submitted today. I personally have a couple. And I'm encouraging all of you to make some time and attend that meeting if you can. As chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, I also want to encourage my colleagues to follow the process as outlined in the budget schedule, because this process will allow the updated 2000 budget to be presented to the public in an organized and a timely manner, with all the amendments noticed to the public, moved and approved at the meeting of November 18th, and adoption and appropriation at the meeting of November 25th. And I'd just like to note that I was advised by the OMB Director, Wanda Phillips, that the questions from the work session on Friday will be in our packets this coming Friday, with the exception of a few that needed a bit more in-depth research. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Next, Mr. Birches to the Chamber of Commerce. Any report?
No report this week.
Thank you, Ms. Dr. Selcraig, the Community Economic Development Committee.
The Community and Economic Development Committee has 3 working groups underway. One of them is on energy, and that group met last week, and Mr. Coffey joined me so that we're getting that integration between the cogeneration committee and the energy work that they're doing. They'll be preparing some information kind of to summarize key points that have to do with energy issues for the community, and also some recommendations, and we'll hold a hearing in November and kind of present that information and listen to the public, and then the committee will meet and bring that back to the Assembly, and we'll hold a work session in November. The Resilient and Healthy Children's Work Committee has met. We met with Carol Como, and we met with United Way and a variety of other community members, and Ms. Drummond is going to take the lead on that, and basically there's already an initiative underway that's a coordinated effort to address children issues, and what we're going to be doing is using that framework, listening to them, and doing the same thing, pulling that information together, bringing it back to this body, kind of updating us on what some of the recommendations are, and hopefully we'll find some important things to do to give a hand in that area. And then the third committee is working subgroup is housing, and that is housing and neighborhood, and that group is just underway. But what we've realized is that housing is so broad and so complex that it has this big homeless element. One of the things that we've heard both from the housing element and also from the education or the youth element is that we've got this in-migration, and homelessness is a bigger issue. So tomorrow at our meeting, what we may do is try to kind of strategize about supporting the Assembly with information on this in-migration, because there's groups out there, again, pulling the information together, and if we can bring them before this body, it'd be helpful. So we're busy, and I'm grateful for all these volunteers in the community that are working on these subgroups, and I have no idea at this moment what they're going to bring to us, but I'm looking forward to their help. And I guess, Ms. Drummond, did you have anything to say on the resilient? Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah.
Is that all for you?
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Drummond, the school district.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The School District Committee appears to be morphing into the Resilient and Successful Children Subcommittee of the Community and Economic Development Committee, and I will have a further report after we meet this week at the next Assembly meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Osiander, Title 21.
Continuing Chapter 3, we meet every Thursday morning, 9:30 to 11:30 in the Planning Department conference room. Anyone's welcome to attend. The draft for the documents are on the Muni webpage. Click on the Planning Department and click under Project 21. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, at some point tonight, I'd like to get kind of an update on the closure of the composting. And I don't know if it would be best to do that during the mayor's report or at the end of the meeting. What would you suggest?
My suggestion is that we should update that later in the evening, towards the end of the meeting, so that we have a chance to have some discussions with the administration, perhaps during the dinner hour, so that we have a little bit more information before we start going forward on that. But I'll make a note. I will make a note under, I guess it's under, would be under special orders, is the compost status.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston, any committee reports? Ms. Johnston? Committee report. Mr. Coffey?
Nothing.
Thank you. I think that's everything on committee reports. Hold on just a moment.
I have a question, actually, Ms. Johnson, regarding the recycling, and it may be something that you want to take up later, but I'll just put it on the table for now. Thank you.
You need to speak on that.
Thank you. It's similar to Ms. Osiander's, kind of, it's out of the box for committees, but I'm getting a lot of calls on recycling, and I'm just wanting to at least talk a little bit about whether or not there's some strategies that we can work on to address kind of consistent concerns I'm hearing, and I'm happy to talk about it later, but I just wanted to share that with Ms. Johnson.
That's actually not I think that is an appropriate topic to take up at the same time we're discussing composting. Ms. Osiander, I see you in the queue. Was that from earlier?
For earlier, sir.
Okay. And Dr. Selcraig, that was from earlier as well. Mr. Coffey, I see you in the queue.
What I would suggest regarding recycling is that we give it enough time so that we can make some judgments. It's new, it's different. I just about killed myself running a cart down my nice steep driveway into the road. I can't wait till the snow is really deep on the ground and I'll be in the Seward Highway. But it's new and different, and I think we need to give it enough time to sort of settle in before we start making evaluations of it.
Thank you, and I think those would be good comments towards the end of the meeting. I would encourage, if members of the body want to talk about recycling, let's hold it till the end of the meeting. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
I'm going to hold it till the end of the meeting.
Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us next to the addendum to the agenda. First, I will ask, are there any laid on the table items for tonight?
Yes, sir, I have two.
Go ahead, Mr. Starr.
One of them is an item for introduction. It's an AO number 2008-114. And the other one is a item for action tonight, which is a replacement. I'm sorry, the mayor's done it, but I can introduce it, I suppose. It's a mayoral item on appointment to our local Subursa Road Board, and both of those items should be in front of you.
And the first one is going to be, the 2008-114 will be identified as item 9F15, and the item AM 716-2008 will be designated item 9D64, D Delta. With those two laid on the table items, is there a motion to incorporate the addendum?
So move.
Looks like it's moved by Ms. Osiander and seconded by Mr. Coffey. I will read the addendum. Item 9B25, resolution number AR 2008-245, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage providing for the appropriation of $54,697 from the State of Alaska Department of Education Division of State Libraries to the Office of Economic and Community Development State Grants Fund 231 for Ready to Read Resource Center 2009 grant for the Anchorage Public Library, accompanied by Assembly Memorandum AM 703-2008. Item 9B26, resolution number AR 2008-246, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly authorizing solid waste services to apply for a matching grant from the Alaska Energy Authority to fund the design and construction of landfill gas-to-energy plant at the Anchorage Regional Landfill, accompanied by Assembly Memorandum AM 704-2008. Next, item 9B27, resolution number AR 2008-247, a resolution approving the conceptual design to lease of a site within the municipal Tudor Road complex to Anchorage Neighborhood Health Center for a new clinic building, Anchorage Community Development Authority, accompanied by Assembly Memorandum AM 705-2008. Item 9D60, Assembly Memorandum AM 702-2008. Amendment number 6 to purchase order number 280412 to KPMG LLP to perform the 2007 independent financial statement audit, federal single audit, and the state single audit for the municipality of Anchorage, increase in funds in the amount of $61,588. Purchase order not to exceed $326,588 municipal clerk. Item 9D61, Assembly Memorandum AM 708-2008. Girdwood Board of Supervisors appointment, Aaron Eaker from the Mayor's Office. Item 9D62, Assembly Memorandum AM 709-2008, proprietary contract to Unisys Corporation and Aperta Limited for providing remittance processing hardware, software, and services to the Municipality of Anchorage, Finance Department, Treasury Division, $171,115, purchasing. Item 9, Delta 63, Assembly Memorandum AM 710-2008. Change order number 2 to purchase order number 270988 with Agnew Beck Consulting, LLC for providing master planning for the Girdwood South Town site for the Municipality of Anchorage, Heritage Land Bank, HLB, $9,865, purchasing. Item 9, Delta 64, AM 716-2008. Subject, Chugiak, Birchwood, Eagle River Rural Road Service Area Board of Supervisors appointment, William Holland. Item 9F12, ordinance number AO 2008-111, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, approving submission by the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility, AWWU, of rate changes based on a non-recurring charges and fees NRC update to the Regulatory Commission of Alaska, the RCA public hearing date, October 28, 2008, accompanied by Assembly Memorandum AM 706-2008. Number 9F13, ordinance number AO 2008-112, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, approving submission of the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility on behalf of the Anchorage Water Utility and the Anchorage Wastewater Utility of revenue requirement studies to the Regulatory Commission of Alaska. Public hearing October 28, 2008, accompanied by Assembly Memorandum AM 707-2008. Item 9F14, ordinance number AO 2008-113, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, authorizing an interfund loan to the Port of Anchorage for the purpose of repaying commercial paper notes as they mature, only in the event that the credit markets experience a heightened liquidity crisis precluding issuance of refunding commercial paper notes to retire outstanding commercial paper note maturities from finance. Public hearing October 28, 2008, accompanied by Assembly Memorandum AM 711-2008. Item 9F15, AO number 2008-114, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly repealing Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 7.80, Anchorage Cooperative Services Authority, and establishing an effective date. With a public hearing date on that will be scheduled for November 18, 2008. Hold on just a second. It is accompanied by, hold on. Nope, not accompanied.
There will be an AM, but it'll be
Right,
turned
but
in later.
It's not accompanied tonight. That's fine. With that printed addendum as well as the laid on the table items, is there any opposition to incorporation of that addendum to the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, the addendum is incorporated. That brings us next to the consent agenda, and I will start tonight on my left with Mr. Coffey, items to be pulled from the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, you've already ruled on a conflict I would have on 9B2 and 9 Delta 54. I'd just like to point that out and ask for your ruling to continue rather than pull them, and I would like to be excused from voting on those. They're all relating to the old building I owned, and they're conditional uses relating to liquor license. I disclosed that a week ago.
Right, it's actually
9
2 weeks ago. It's 9
B2,
Bravo 2, and what was the second?
9 Delta 54.
And Mr. Coffey, I will find that you have a conflict as to both of those, and that ruling will stay in effect. And I don't see a need to pull those, but I will note that when we vote on the consent agenda as to those two items, even though you may be voting on the remainder of the consent agenda, you won't be voting on those two.
Was that 9 Delta?
I appreciate it.
What was that?
9 Bravo 2 and 9 Delta 54. Ms. Johnston, any items to pull?
Yes, I'd like to pull 9B1 and 9 Delta 36 through 9 Delta 53.
Delta 36 to 53.
All of them?
Yes.
36 to 53. And for clarification for the body, those are all the brown jug matters collectively.
9B.
Thank you. Anything else to pull?
No, thank you.
All right. 9 Delta 36. Oh, the first one was 9 Bravo 1.
And then I don't know, what do you have on that?
Ms. Osiander, any items to pull?
9 Bravo 9 on the regular agenda. 9 Delta 35. And, Mr. Chairman, that one is only because I believe that it should be an informational memorandum, and it should be on the E section of the agenda, not because I object to it.
And actually, Ms. Osiander, I appreciate your pulling that. That was the matter I discussed with the administration, and I am in agreement. And so rather than pulling it, I'm going to have it moved and make it renumbered as 9 Echo.
All right, I'll wait then and make that motion when we get through this portion of the meeting, sir. So
That's fine, but
I'm not pulling that one at this point.
Okay,
then.
but I agree with you that it should be 9 Echo 2.
Thank you. On the addendum,
Yes.
I'd like to pull 9 Bravo 27.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Drummond, any items to pull?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually was going to pull 9 Delta 35, which is now 9 Echo 2, because I had some questions on it. Would it be appropriate to still pull it to deal with the
It's
question?
fine to go ahead and pull it, and then
Okay.
what we will do is we will renumber it when we get to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Selcraig, any other items? I'm
Nine.
sorry, hold on just a moment. Ms. Drummond, any other items to pull?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Selcraig.
9 Delta 23.
Nine Delta 20, anything else?
No.
I have no items to pull. Mr. Birch.
I didn't really care to pull it, but it has been pulled already. But on 9B1, I'd just like to be listed as a co-sponsor.
Well, we can take that up when.
Thank you.
Ms. Gray-Jackson, any items to pull?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the addendum, 9F, Frank 15.
Any other items? Any other items, Ms. Gray-Jackson?
I'm sorry, no thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull 9 Bravo 20, 9B20.
9B, 9B,
I believe that's on the addendum.
And
B.
what's that? No, it's on the regular. This is about the weed and seed. Just as a quick inquiry, similar to Mr. Coffey, I assume this is because of your involvement with the weed and seed program and that you're
Yes, but not the same as before. I just wanted to clarify, this is not my weed and seed site.
Oh, okay.
So with that clarified, then perhaps we don't have to pull it.
I don't think we need to pull it. I will note for the record that we will not pull 9B20. I'll note that although there are certain weed and seed programs that Mr. Gutierrez is involved with and has a conflict, this is one in which he is not involved and he does not have a conflict, so he will be participating. Anything else, Mr. Gutierrez?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Starr.
No items.
All right. Other than the items that have been pulled, I'll ask if there is any opposition to approval of the consent agenda. Hearing and seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. And highest on the list of things that happen on the consent agenda, they always remind me to do this when it happens, is we have just appointed a whole bunch of people to boards and commissions. If you are here and we have just appointed you to a board or a commission, if you could please, I think there's more than 3, if you could all line up at the microphone, introduce us, tell us who you are, and tell us what you've been appointed to or reappointed to. That would really be great for us to put a face with the name. And before you start introducing, I just want to, on behalf of the entire Assembly and I think the entire municipality, we want to thank all of you for your service. It's volunteers like you that help make this city run, and without that volunteer assistance, it would be very difficult for government to function. So thank you on behalf of everyone. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name's Joan Fisher. I was just appointed to the Senior Citizens Commission, which I'm almost one. And thank you very much. It's my first time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Timothy Vig. I've been appointed to the Zoning Examiner Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Megan Foster, and I was appointed to the Animal Control Board.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Churchill. I was appointed to the Anchorage Equal Rights Commission. I may be coming to Mr. Gutierrez for advice. You did serve on that, I remember. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tam Agasti Giesler, and I was reappointed to the Education and Workforce Advisory Commission.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm David Harrington. I have been appointed to the Arts Advisory Commission.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Len Story, and I've been appointed to the Planning Board.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michelle McNulty, and I've been appointed to the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Carrie Campbell, and I was just appointed to the Animal Control Advisory Board.
Thank you.
I'm Catherine Ferguson. I'm with the Senior Advisory Commission, and I thank you all for reappointing me. It's quite an honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there's... All right, that brings us next to pulled items. The first is item 9B1, Ms. Johnston.
Yes, I pulled this because...
Actually, first start with, please move to approve.
Move to approve.
Second. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Johnston.
I pulled this item because there were others that wished to be co-sponsors, and I received an email. One was Patrick Flynn, and Chris Birch, and Dan Coffey, Debbie Osiander,
Matt Clayman. Anyone else that wishes to be added as co-sponsors? Okay. Those names will be added as co-sponsors. What's that?
Thank you.
It was Coffey, Johnston, Osiander, Flynn, Birch.
Flynn.
I think I said Flynn. Did I say Flynn? Yes, I did say Flynn. Okay. All right. As to item 9B1, I'll ask if there's any opposition to approval of 9B1. Hearing and seeing none, that is approved unanimously with the addition of co-sponsors.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Osiander.
I was wondering if I could move to reorder the agenda on that one item before we get deep into this.
I actually think because Ms. Drummond has questions about it, that we can take it up at the same time.
No, sir, all I want to do is move it from Delta 35 to E2.
Right. It's just that we can take it up when we get there because Ms. Drummond...
I don't want to take it up now.
I know, but Ms. Drummond wants to take it up separately. She has questions about it. So we'll move it when we come to it.
Okay.
Okay. Next brings us to 9B9, Ms. Osiander. We need a motion to approve 9B9.
Getting to it, sir.
Okay.
Move to postpone to our next meeting. And this is at the request.
Please punch your buttons, Ms. Osiander and Mr. Coffey. Mr. Coffey?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Ms. Osiander.
I asked a question about this and got back from the department that there'd been an error, and so they wanted some additional time.
Great.
And just
I
a
talked to Mr. Carpenter about that.
question for the administration. Is there any problem with delaying this by 2 weeks? Ms. Weddleton?
Chair,
you look
there's no problem.
Okay. Is there any opposition to postponing 9B9 until October 28th?
Was it a computer?
Hearing and seeing none, that is continued till October 28th. Next item looks like it is 9 Delta 23, Dr. Selcraig.
Isn't there a Delta one? Maybe, no, maybe. Okay.
B27. Bravo 27.
Bravo's 27.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, I apologize. Yes.
Sorry.
Bravo 27, I apologize. Go ahead. That was pulled by Ms. Osiander.
Move to
I was
approve.
not looking at the...
Second.
It's a lot.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to talk about this one publicly a little bit. My main concern with this is the process. Basically, we are going to, if this goes further, if the Assembly approves it, and then we get later a lease before us, we are going to be donating a municipal asset of significant value to a private nonprofit, which in itself is not at all a bad thing. My concern is this is a property that's worth over $3 million, and I am not aware of any kind of broad citywide notification to nonprofits that this was available. My understanding on this is that the process was through some private conversations with the mayor's office, there was a decision to move ahead and provide this property to Anchorage Neighborhood Health Center. I'm probably going to end up voting for this, but I really would ask that folks out in the community seize the opportunity to testify the next time this comes before us if they have any concerns. Basically, this process is set up so that the administration gets a sense of where the Assembly is by approving the resolution tonight. But my understanding is the lease itself will come before us for public hearing and approval sometime, I believe, in October. This is what we were told. In an ideal world, I think that the better approach is to let everybody in the city know that this is a potential, so that we would have had the opportunity to hear from other nonprofits to see if there was anyone else who had a more compelling need or who could fit into that particular site better. As I say, this is a great organization. I have absolutely nothing against Anchorage Neighborhood Health. They provide a wonderful, wonderful service for our community, and I've heard nothing but good about them. My concern entirely is that there are many other nonprofit organizations that are desperate for housing. And this is a significant municipal asset to donate. So with that, I've done what I wanted to do, so thank you, sir.
Mr. Abbott, I know the administration had expressed some interest in actually not voting tonight, but scheduling this for a public hearing. Is there a request from the administration to put this matter on for a public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, we request that this matter be set for public hearing on October 28th.
All right. Is there any opposition to putting this matter on for public hearing on October 28th? Is that we need a second for that? Mr. Abbott, I think you can push first motion on behalf of the administration.
Actually, I can't.
All right.
So, it's going to be up to one of you.
Ms. Osiander has moved, and looks like Mr. Gutierrez has seconded. Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. Is there any opposition to scheduling this for public hearing on October 28th? Hearing and seeing none, this will be continued for consideration until October 28th, when it will be put on for a public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osiander. Now I'm off the addendum and back onto the regular agenda, and the next item is item 9, Delta 23, Dr. Selkrig.
I'd just like to put on...
Hold on. You need to
move to approve.
And we need a second.
Second.
I'd like to put on the record that Mr. McCoy has currently agreed to work on my campaign for mayor. There's been no contract signed, but there's been a verbal agreement in place, so I want to make the body aware of that, and I think I would like to, actually I moved. Can I do that? If there's a conflict, can I move?
Are you declaring that you believe you have a conflict?
Well, I just want to, I'm not sure. What do you think, Mr. Chairman?
I don't. Well, is there anything about the fact that you have reached a verbal agreement with Mr. McCoy for him to work? I know in the past he has been your legislative aide for this body. Is there anything about either the past or the present or the future relationship with Mr. McCoy that would make you unable to vote in the public interest?
Absolutely not.
All right.
Thank you.
I find that you have no conflict. Is there anyone that has objection to that finding? Hearing and seeing none, I will ask if there's any opposition to approval of item 9, Delta 23. Hearing and seeing none, that item is... I'm sorry.
I just wanted to ask a quick clarifying question.
Sure.
The information that we got on this was incorrect in that it detailed his attendance record at the wrong commission. And so I just wanted to clarify that the attendance record submitted, and I apologize, I didn't have time to get back to Mr. Johnson, is actually for the board that he's currently on and not the budget advisory.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So in fact, what we're looking at is an accurate record of attendance on this board, not the budget advisory
So
board.
it's basically just erase the heading there because the heading's wrong.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Osiander. Anything else as to this matter? Any opposition to approval of 9 Delta 23? Hearing and seeing none, that's approved unanimously. That brings us next to item 9 Delta 35. And Ms. Osiander has, you've made the motion and Mr. Coffey has seconded it previously. I will note that motion to reorder this as 9 Echo 2. Ask if there's any opposition to renumbering this 9 Echo 2. Hearing and seeing none, that is renumbered 9 Echo 2. And Ms. Drummond, you had some questions, so I. All right, moved by Ms. Drummond and seconded by moved by Ms. Osiander, you're getting ahead of the
I
game.
was making a recommendation to Ms. Drummond when I did that, and you heard me.
And we'll deal with it when.
All right. Yeah, it looks like Ms. Osiander moved to accept. So go ahead, Ms. Drummond.
You want me to ask my question now?
Yes,
or
please.
when we get to the E section?
No, we are there. Go for it.
Okay. Actually, I would move to approve.
Actually, the motion is to accept, and that's been moved and seconded. So go ahead and ask the question.
Actually, I was quite excited to see this list in our notebooks, because I have never seen all the boards and commission members listed anywhere, and I have looked for years on the website. And I would like to know why these members of the boards and commissions, all these great volunteers from our community, are not listed on the municipal website. The vacancies are listed, but not the actual memberships.
Mr. Johnson.
Well, I would apologize that Ms. Drummond hasn't been able to find it, but it is listed on the municipal website, muni.org/boards. It's on the right-hand part of that page, actually right next to where the list of the vacancies is. It's available there 24/7
Okay. How long has it been there?
since 2004, 2003.
I guess I haven't looked thoroughly enough, but thank you. I will look for it, and thank you in advance.
Sure. It's a large website, and figuring out how to navigate towards boards and commissions and where that fits in the architecture of a large website can be confusing. We're trying to make that more clear to the public. So I sympathize.
Thank you.
Dr. Selkrig.
I have a question, just in terms of presentation of information. I appreciate the information regarding boards and commissions members or their attendance record, but is there a way that we could, like, not use 3 sheets of paper? And I'm wondering if there's a way for you just to say they missed this many meetings, or if you could do some sort of summary that says out of 54 meetings, they were absent for a number, only because if you start looking at our packet today, you can see that we've allotted many, many pages. If there's some way you could give a summary, do you feel that's possible?
We've provided the information to the Assembly in the manner in which the Assembly has traditionally requested it. If you'd like to make a format change, we're certainly willing to work with you.
Okay.
One of the reasons why it is this complex is that under the code, there's actually a 4-point test to determine whether or not someone has met the attendance standard in code. So you have to determine whether the record meets 4 different tests. And that takes a fair amount of looking at all the various, at all the information. I'd be happy to work on a staff level to simplify it for you and save a few trees. But this is the way that the Assembly has traditionally requested.
I'll follow up with you, and there's some way to. I would trust your summary. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, any opposition to accepting this information memorandum? Hearing and seeing none, that is accepted. That brings us next to items 9 Delta 36 through 9 Delta 53. And moved by Ms. Johnston, seconded by
Mr. Coffey.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. And I would note.
Point of order question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Coffey.
Can we collectivize our approvals, or do we have to move on each one?
I'm going to ask that we do it collectively. And I treat that motion as a motion to approve all, however many are in there. I didn't count them.
Thank you. So we're looking at all of the brown jugs.
We're looking at all of them. And I would just note, it was called to my attention previously that as to item 9 Delta 37, the title refers to brown jug license number 4832, and I have been subsequently advised that that license number is actually number 4775. Again, 4832 on item 9 Delta 37 should be 4775. Okay. No, this is, let me just, because, and Ms. Johnston pulled these at my request, and I'll give a little bit of a background both for the audience and for the body. This is a sale of the largest liquor store business in the community, and because of the size of the sale, it was my belief as chair of this body that it was in the body's interest as well as the community's interest to have at least hear more from the buyers than we might typically have on the consent agenda There was some discussion about whether we should actually postpone this for 2 weeks and have a public hearing. After discussions with the attorney representing the buyers, I agreed that we would put it on not for a public hearing, but have an opportunity for the buyers to answer questions from the Assembly, both in terms of the Brown Jug's history and working with the community and the new buyer's commitment to maintain those same standards. And so I would ask if there's a representative of the buyers for these liquor permits that could answer questions that the body may have, if you could come forward and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rick Crook. I'm the president of Liquor Stores GP from Edmonton, Alberta.
Is there anyone that has, I can ask questions, or if anyone has questions? Here we go. Thank you all for, Dr. Selcraig.
Well, I think we're all curious as to whether you'll be the kind of owner that we've enjoyed in the past. Brown Jug has played an important role in addressing a variety of issues around alcohol and alcohol management. They've also been an awfully good partner in terms of their community around them. So I guess, can you tell us a little bit about your intent in terms of how you will manage these stores? And
Certainly. Well, first of all, we also are very impressed with the social responsibility of Brown Jug and being primarily liquor store retailers. It's a primary focus of anybody in that industry. We're not grocers. We're not other businesses. First and foremost, Mr. Ed O'Neill, Mr. O.C. Madden, and Mr. Bob Klein have agreed to stay on to run the company as it is in their various capacities and run the business. Mr. Shin is going to stay on for a 6-month contract to consult with us, and at that point would be moving on. But the main group of those people that have put together many of these social responsible programs, which are very impressive, are staying with us to run the company as it is. And that's our initial first thing. We look forward to learning from some of the things they've done, in particular working with their government representatives on as an example, the civil penalty, because it's something that prior to coming to Alaska we had read about in a magazine called Market Watch, which is an industry a newspaper type of thing, and it's something we're trying to put forward to our representatives in Canada, although be it with a lot of backpush at this point, but it's something that allows retailers to be responsible, to have that type of mechanism to go and fight minors and inebriates in a store. So we look forward to working with them and again, them running the business in the same manner they've continued to run it. So
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey.
Thank you. As most of my colleagues and much of the public knows, I've been for years was engaged as an attorney in the liquor industry, and Mr. O'Neill and I and Mr. Shin and the others helped establish an outfit called the Responsible Beverage Retailers Association. And do you intend to continue your activities with that association?
We do, and hopefully we can enhance it. We'll take Mr. O'Neill's direction on that, and because he is the driver of the communications, the responsibility programs, the community relations programs, and we look forward to him and continuing those, but also enhancing them. So we're very much in favor of that.
You know, what's happened over the years, I think, is that Brown Jug has developed a reputation as such a very, very good operator, and that does two things. One, it raises our expectations of you, and two, it probably gains you a substantial, or Brown Jug a substantial business advantage, because we know that if you're requesting something of us, a permit or a land use condition, that we don't have to worry about the way in which you folks are going to operate the stores. And I will just express that I, and I'm sure all my colleagues, hope that continues, because you set a very high standard, and frankly, we're very pleased with that. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to working with them. So.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston.
One of the aspects of Brown Jug is that they've had a very low turnover as far as their employees. Mm-hmm. And that's because of benefits and because of incentive programs. Are you going to maintain that?
We will be. We're working with the same benefits supplier and 401k, which they provide to all of their employees, including their hourly to a certain point. So we would bring all of those things forward, and including all the training which is provided today, which is not a paid benefit, but is something that they're a leader in, I think, in our industry. So all the things we have today, they have today, we plan to keep in place.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no one else in the queue. I just have a couple of questions. My understanding is that in advance of tonight's meeting that you or representatives of both Brown Jug and the new purchasers have been going to community councils throughout Anchorage and meeting with them and making presentations. What's been generally the response at community councils to your visits?
I think they've been obviously positive, much as you've stated here, that Brown Jug is a leader in the community, and as such, it makes it easier when it's a company like Brown Jug. If it was a poor operator or ourselves being a poor operator, I think there would be a lot of issues. And I think that's the first and foremost. They were a responsible operator in all aspects of the liquor business. That's the biggest key that people are looking for. They're not looking for irresponsible operators and want to ensure that continues.
Okay. Well, I think I speak on behalf of the entire Assembly that we believe Brown Jug has set a tremendous standard that I think you'll have unanimous support for these, but I think in approving these, we hope that you will either meet or exceed the standard that Brown Jug has set for this very important business in our community.
Thank you. And if I can work with any of you to help us, again, with the civil penalty thing in Canada, that would be great because it would allow us to push that thing forward. But thank you for having us today.
Thank you very much. No one else is in the queue. The clerk has advised that as to approval of these, we can't do them collectively. We have to do them one at a time. So we'll go through. I will go announce each one by item number and ask if there's any opposition. As to item 9, Delta. Oh, okay. Okay. Actually, we'll need a motion for each one. Go ahead. As to 9 Delta 36, Mr. Birch has moved. Ms. Osiander has seconded. Is there any opposition to approval of 9D 36? Hearing and seeing none, that is approved. 9D 37. Do they need to click again?
Need to clear.
Somebody go ahead and make motions again.
We need it cleared.
Cleared.
Oh. It needs to be cleared.
It's not cleared on ours. Can we do them verbally? It's still not cleared. It's not.
Hit the one up at the top that has the line in it.
We're hitting it. It doesn't. It's not cleared.
All right. Well, let's do the next one by voice.
Move to.
Right.
Okay. Did you
Next by voice. 9 Delta 37.
move to approve?
Oh, actually, you should be able to do it now. Dr. Selkirk has moved. Ms. Drummond has seconded. Any opposition to 9 Delta 37? Hearing and seeing none, that is approved. Next is 9 Delta 38. Need a motion.
It's not cleared.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Gutierrez, seconded by Dr. Selkirk. Any opposition to 9 Delta 38? That item is approved unanimously. 9 Delta 39.
Move to approve.
Second.
The system seems to be lagging.
All right, it's in now. All right, any opposition to 9 Delta 39? That is approved unanimously. 9 Delta 40.
Move to approve.
Moved by Dr. Selkirk, seconded by Ms. Drummond. Any opposition to 9 Delta 40? That is approved unanimously. 9 Delta 41. You can just hit buttons once they come up, and I'll announce who made them up. Moved by Dr. Selkirk, seconded by Mr. Birch. Any opposition to 9 Delta 41? That's approved unanimously. 9 Delta 42.
Still.
Moved by Mr. Gutierrez, seconded by Ms. Gray Jackson. Any opposition to 9 Delta 42? That is approved unanimously. 9 Delta 43. Moved by Dr. Selkirk, seconded by Ms. Gray Jackson. Any opposition to 9 Delta 43? That's approved unanimously. 9 Delta 44. Moved by Mr. Gutierrez, seconded by Ms. Drummond. Any opposition to 9 Delta 44? That's approved unanimously. 9 Delta 45. Moved by Dr. Selkirk, seconded by Ms. Gray Jackson. Any opposition to 9 Delta 45? That's approved unanimously. 9 Delta 46. Moved by Mr. Gutierrez, seconded by Ms. Gray Jackson. Any opposition to 9 D 46? That's approved unanimously. 9 Delta 47. Moved by Dr. Selcraig, seconded by Mr. Gutierrez. Any opposition to 9 Delta 47? That is approved unanimously. 9 Delta 48. Moved by Dr. Selcraig, seconded by Ms. Drummond. Any opposition to 9 Delta 48? That's approved unanimously. 9 Delta 49. Moved by Mr. Gutierrez, seconded by Ms. Gray Jackson. Any opposition to 9 Delta 49? That's approved unanimously. 9 Delta 50. Moved by Dr. Selcraig, seconded by Mr. Starr. Any opposition to 9 Delta 50? That's approved unanimously. 9 Delta 51. Moved by Dr. Selcraig, seconded by Ms. Drummond. Any opposition? That's approved unanimously. 9 Delta 52. Moved by Dr. Selcraig, seconded by Ms. Gray Jackson. Any opposition? That's approved unanimously. 9 Delta 53. Moved by Dr. Selcraig, seconded by Ms. Drummond. Any opposition? That is approved unanimously. And that gets us through all those. Thank you for
I think we've got one more.
for working our way through. 54 was an item that Mr. Coffey previously identified his conflict, and it was not pulled because he was noted as not participating. And that brings us to the last item on the consent agenda that was pulled, which is 9F15. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Move to introduce.
Second. And we need a third.
Third.
All right.
Thank you.
Third was Mr. Gutierrez, I believe. Go ahead, Ms. Gray Jackson. What's that? Mr. Starr was the third. Who was the second?
I was.
Coffey was. Okay. All right. Ms. Gray Jackson, you had pulled it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Starr for bringing this forward because the code provides that the Assembly can either reauthorize the CSA or repeal it on or before September 15, 2010. And the code also provides that the administration is to bring a report to the Assembly by September 15, 2009 on the performance of the CSA. What happened on Friday, it wasn't brought forward by the administration, but I brought forward as the chair of the Budget Finance Committee, and at the request of Ms. Osiander, a report basically on the performance of the Cooperative Services Authority. And in that report I believe there were 3 recommendations on what we could or should do with the Cooperative Services Authority, and one was to end its existence, another one was to bring it in-house under the purchasing department, and another one was to possibly sell it. And I ended my memo and my report with the fact that the administration was going to review all these options and come up with a recommendation to the Assembly. So I think Mr. Starr's ordinance, although I appreciate him bringing it forward, is a little bit premature, especially considering the fact that the administration hasn't had time yet to do what was requested in the report that I provided, and also because the Cooperative Services Authority's budget is before the Assembly for appropriation like the other cities' budgets are, and I even think it was advertised.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Aren't we deliberating the merits of an ordinance that's just been introduced?
Mr. Coffey, that point is well taken, but I think in light of the circumstances, I'm going to give her a little bit of time to say this. I don't see it as binding on the authority. We're certainly not voting tonight, and right. I'll give her a little bit more.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My recommendation would be to change the public hearing from November 18th to December 2nd, and basically, as I just stated, it's because the Cooperative Services Authorities, number one, their budget is, I believe, advertised and is before us, and I think we need to deal with that before we even consider repealing the CSA by ordinance. So bottom line is I would like to change the public hearing date to December 2nd. Thank you.
So that would be, if you would make a motion to that effect, you should push first motion, Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to change the public hearing date from November 18th to December 2nd.
Second. Now that I understand why we had the speech before the motion. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Starr, next in the queue.
Well, I won't be supporting the motion. I'd rather have the issue to have the public hearing in 30 days so that we can very well just adjust the budgetary items that may be reflective of the items that would come to us for recommendation. And for those that body that don't know, the board members, there's 4 of them currently, is Mr. Abbott, Mr. Malden, Pamela Chinieri, and Sharon Weddleton. So, technically we could have a meeting tonight. 3 of the 4 board members are here. So I think the administration recommendations in this case also may reflect some of the board recommendations. And so I think it's a prudent discussion to have. Mr. Abbott indicated to me that they would have a CSA board meeting within the next 20 days. And I believe to have that opinion back to us for action that may adjust other budgets as appropriate. So by having that to us to act item on the 18th for a public hearing allows consideration and may be prudent to adjust budgets accordingly. So I would move that the hearing date stay on the 18th and that we do it for those reasons.
You're speaking in opposition to Ms. Gray-Jackson's motion. And I would like to hear from the body, but I just would note Mr. Starr spoke with me in advance, and I had specifically asked that we not put this on for public hearing until the 18th of November because I felt if the body supported this and the administration supported it and it was going to have budget impacts, it made the most sense to have that discussion kind of towards the end of the budget discussion. But I would certainly welcome comments both from the administration and other members of the body in terms of the benefits of deciding before we approve the budget or waiting until after. And so, Mr. Abbott, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Starr mentioned, the CSA board is actively working on an analysis of of board recommendation on the future of the CSA. I hope we can bring that to you in the 20 days that Mr. Starr mentioned. That's our goal. If the Assembly does set this for December 2nd, which I think is a prudent step at this point, we will still be able to adopt a budget in advance of that. To the degree that the Assembly takes action in the budget that differs from its action ultimately on the amendment or on the ordinance before you, I don't anticipate that it would be a significant budget item to make an adjustment at a later date. So we would recommend the December 2nd date as a way to deal with this. It's likely to be a challenging issue, or at least potentially could be. I think separating it from the budget conversation makes some sense.
Okay, I see no one else in the queue. Sorry, Ms. Osiander, I didn't see you in the queue. Go ahead.
I tend to agree with your initial position, Mr. Chairman, in that it seems to me highly relevant to the budget, and as such, I would like to do it at the same time, or as close to as possible. So I think that the current hearing date seems reasonable. And if for some reason there's some glitch where they can't get us a recommendation, there can always be a postponement later. But right now, let's aim for it.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
I'm going to recommend and encourage my colleagues to agree with me on this. Number one, because there are 3 options, and it sounds as if, we've already determined that it's going to go away, and that might not very well happen. And if it's brought in-house, the budget's not going to go away. Thank you.
Mr. Starr.
Well, it's turning into deliberation. My issue that I've had all throughout is that the municipal contributions to keeping the budget solvent are relevant. We're making quite an abundant contribution to the welfare and health of that entity to the tune of what we talked about at the work session was upwards of $550,000 on a supplemental contribution from the municipality. That can't continue without a discussion around the budget. So my point in hearing it and fleshing the topic out for the 18th is very relevant to the budget discussions, and I think makes sense to have them.
I see no one else in the queue. Go ahead, Dr. Selcraig.
I think for me, this is challenging because it was laid on the table tonight, so I'm just catching up to really understand its significance. So I heard from the administration, did I understand that you anticipate that, in fact, you will have information regarding this topic to us in the budget process as we unfold? Is that correct, Mr. Abbott?
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Selcraig, we're definitely going to have information for you on this subject. Among other things, there may be a recommendation that the CSA's budget be adjusted or changed. However, that is a different issue potentially from whether or not the CSA is dissolved as an entity. There's nothing that would preclude the Assembly from either zero budgeting CSA or changing the budget of CSA based on the Board's recommendations and the Assembly's own deliberations, and then dealing with the legal structure of CSA in December.
So those are really two different issues. One is the one that directly relates to our budget process. The other is a structural issue, is whether or not we want to keep this entity in place. Okay,
That's correct.
That helps me. Thank you.
No one else is in the queue, so I'll exercise my life as the one that speaks last, at least on some things. I already know in the context of the budget there are members of the body who are already talking about some budget amendments, and one of the questions that will come up is where does the money come from and how are we going to pay for it if we make certain amendments. And so I am going to support the current public hearing date for now, but I also recognize I'm somebody that can be very patient, and I would certainly, if we get in a place on the 18th where we really are not, and I believe we're not in a position to make a meaningful decision, I will be very supportive of a motion to postpone at that time. So at least for now, I'm going to vote against the changed hearing date because I'm willing to let the process develop and see how it goes from there. And if we need more time, I'm not going to hesitate to take it. But if we can decide without more time, then I will be prepared to decide. And given my understanding from the administration that we'll have some comments from this committee or from this group within the next 20 days, I'm also comfortable with the 18th. So I will be voting against the motion. And with that, I know this will not be a unified vote, so please vote. A vote yes means we have the public hearing on December 2nd. A vote no means that at least the first public hearing is on November 18th. Please vote. And that fails by a vote of 6-4 with Mr. Flynn not participating. So it stays on the 18th. That concludes the consent agenda. The next item we will move to is item 12. Item 12, 12A, an appearance request from Jed Whitaker. Mr. Whitaker, are you here with us? Please come down and.
My name is Jed Whitaker. I live in beautiful downtown Spenard on 26th Street. A couple observations that kind of got me excited about this whole topic is since I've been living there in the last 18 months, I've almost been run over about 3 times trying to cross Spenard Road. Also, last fall, there was a car that got red tagged on my street, 26th Street, and it wasn't removed till spring, and so the graders just plowed snow around it, which essentially turned 26th Street into a one-lane road. And I don't know if you're familiar with beautiful downtown Spenard, but 25th, 26th, and 27th between Spenard and Arctic are largely residential, and they don't have sidewalks. My street, 26th, is used by the Holy Rosary as their PE area, and there are children that live in my neighborhood. There are, it commercial areas on both ends of 25th, 26th, 27th, Arctic and Spenard. But largely 25th, 26th, and 27th between Arctic and Spenard are residential, but we don't have sidewalks. The posted speed limit on those streets is 25 miles an hour. Now that we have a new business, Sugar Spoon, some of the clientele there like to park right next to Sugar Spoon on both sides of the street, so then we have a one lane, which makes it strange. In fact, there is no sign that says you can't park on either side of the street. So if two cars parked on my street, 26th, and 25th and 27th are also the same way, it narrows it down into about a lane and a half. And I understand that there's this proposed project for the Spenard Road improvement. So I would like to offer some suggestions that you might be able to incorporate into the improvement of Spenard Road in beautiful downtown Spenard. One observation, too, that I forgot to mention. There is no posted speed limit between Fireweed and Northern Lights on Spenard. And we live in 40-mile-an-hour town, so people do 40 miles an hour. I think that's why perhaps I've almost been hit 3 times trying to cross Spenard. I would suggest, for starters, to post a speed limit on Spenard Road between Fireweed and Northern Lights of 25 miles an hour. I've got 30 seconds.
I'll give you the 30 seconds.
Thank you. They're strictly improvements, suggested improvements. Reduce the speed limit to 20 miles an hour and install speed bumps on 25th, 26th between Arctic and Spenard. Crosswalks on Spenard Road corners of 25th, 26th, and 27th. And then finally, with the Spenard Road improvement, close the egress to Chilkoot Charlie's parking lot on 25th and 26th and incorporate a new egress of Chilkoot Charlie's parking lot onto Spenard Road, because people from all over Anchorage come to Chilkoot Charlie's. We have a lot of cruising in our neighborhood, and the historical red light of Spenard. But again, these 25th, 26th, and 27th are largely residential, and they could be much more pedestrian-friendly in terms of public safety. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Appreciate your coming down. I see no one with questions. Thank you very much. That brings us next to item 11A, AM 592-2008, the Planning and Zoning Commission appointments, Arthur Isham, Nancy Pease, and Kana Yoshimura. The public hearing on this matter is now open. Anyone wishing to be heard on item 9 or 11A regarding planning and zoning appointments, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What is the wish of the body? Moved by Dr. Selcraig. Second? Is there a second? Mr. Flynn. The record will reflect that Mr. Flynn has joined us, and he has seconded this. Is there any opposition to these 3 appointments? Hearing and seeing none, that is approved. Mr. Flynn,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Abbott.
I should note, these items are not public hearing items. These, all of these folks were set for a public comment period, and they're not noticed for public hearings. They're simply there for the public, I think, to comment to you all, and for you all to be able to, potentially to consider these appointments. But I don't think it's a problem. I'm just suggesting that technically I don't think these are actually public hearings.
And the clerk is, while you were commenting, the clerk was reminding me of exactly the same thing. So we do not need public hearings, but I think we have to take them each up individually. So we must take them up individually, but we don't need hearings. Ms. Osiander.
Mr. Abbott, I have received from some public comment about one of these individuals. Can I just pass those on to you, or how would you like those dealt with? I haven't done anything with them but listened, so I didn't know.
We'd be glad if you have concerns. Obviously, they've already been appointed. There's not a process for unappointing them. So I'm not sure. I mean, we'd be glad to hear the feedback that you've received.
We're working through a new process here, and so
Okay.
I just wanted to get a common understanding of how to deal with it. So basically, you would like us to share the comments that we hear with you prior to them actually appearing in, is what I heard you say.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I think that means you don't need to necessarily announce them today.
I will not.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Osiander. Mr. Coffey, next.
Well, Mr. Abbott said they're already appointed. There's no way to unappoint them. No. You have appointed them. For example, if you voted 11A down, they would not be appointed.
Correct. I'm just saying that the administration, there's not a role for the administration to unappoint them. The Assembly obviously can fail to confirm, and I'm not suggesting that otherwise.
Yeah. And then I'll just note this, Mr. Chairman. Like Ms. Osiander, I've received comments about one of these individuals, and I'm not going to bring it up at this juncture, but it goes again with my concerns I expressed earlier, I think, when one of an individual was appointed to P&Z not too long ago, and that is the idea of bringing forth a personal and a private agenda contrary to the rules and laws of our city. But this is near the end of this administration, and other mayors will have an opportunity to replace these people as their terms end, and I'll let it go at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Ms. Osiander had one. All right. That brings us next to item 11B, Board of Adjustment appointments. Is there a motion to approve these? We did vote on A.
Yes.
We voted on A. Dr. Selkirk is seconded on B. Is there any opposition to 11B? Hearing and seeing none, that appointment is approved.
I think we did.
Next is item, Madam Clerk, did we vote on 11A?
Did we vote on 11A?
Clerk confirms that we have voted. 11C, Urban Design Commission appointments, Patrick Coleman, James Doherty, and Doug Gassick. A motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Flynn has moved. Mr. Coffey has seconded. Is there any opposition to approval of 11C? Hearing and seeing none, that item is approved. Next item, 11D, Plating Board appointments, Ellen McKay, Len Story, and Anna Taylor. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Go ahead and hit your button. Thank you very much. Any opposition to 11D? 11D Delta is approved. Next, 11E, Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals appointments, Dean Carras.
Move to approve.
Timothy Vig and Holly Sozo. Moved by Mr. Coffey, seconded by Ms. Johnston. Any opposition to approval of 11E? That is approved unanimously. 11F, Community Development Authority Board of Directors appointments, Ted Carlson, Debbie Sedgwick, and Jan Sieberts.
Move to approve.
Seconded by Mr. Flynn. Is there any opposition to approval of 11F? Hearing and seeing none, that is approved unanimously. That brings us next to item 11G. This is a...
Mr. Chairman, for those newly confirmed, perhaps acknowledge some of them are here. It would be nice to re-acknowledge their efforts, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. If we just appointed you to a board or commission, if you could please come down, tell us who you are so we can identify, and then I will thank you on behalf of the body. If you've just been appointed, please come down and identify yourself. Mr. Starr, you got
they
me
left.
confused. They came and left. Okay.
I'd just like to make a comment.
Dr. Selkirk, go ahead.
Even though they are not here, these are hardworking boards, and I just want to. I know we are all really appreciative. These boards take a lot of time, and I think we've got some wonderful people that we reappointed and appointed tonight. So I just want to put on the record, thanks a lot.
All right. The next item is item 11G, a notice of rescission. What I would like to do actually is take about a 5-minute stand down, because I know there's some procedural questions, and rather than, as the joke goes, nothing is worse than watching sausage get made, we're going to take a 5-minute stand down to make sure that what we do next is we know what we're doing. So 5-minute stand down, and then we will resume.
Good discussion.
Go ahead, Ms. Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a motion to make, and then I'll explain the background and the rationale, if you would.
All right, if you want to push the first motion button, that would be great. Go ahead and make your motion. Looks like Mr. Gutierrez has seconded it. Go ahead, Ms.
He hasn't
Drummond.
even heard it yet, but thank you. I move to give Players House of Rock until October 28, 2008, to file the application for modification of conditional use and to postpone assembly action on rescission of the restaurant designation until a hearing on the modification occurs.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Go ahead and speak to the motion, Ms. Drummond.
Thank you. Last meeting, September 30th, I gave notice of intent to move to rescind the Assembly's May 20th action on Players House of Rock application for a restaurant designation. This is the background to date. Number one, the conditional use at this location covered the operation of the Fly-By nightclub. The liquor license transferred to Players House of Rock. When Players House of Rock changed its operation under a restaurant designation to its liquor license, two steps were needed. Number one, application to the ABC Board and the Municipal Assembly for the restaurant designation, and two, application to the Anchorage Assembly for modification of the conditional use. Application to modify the conditional use is needed when a change in operation could result in a significant impact on the use and enjoyment of adjacent properties by owners and occupants per Municipal Code 21.15.030J2C. The restaurant designation to the liquor license is a material change in operation, a change which was not present when the House of Rock opened. Players House of Rock has failed to apply for a modification of the conditional use. I am recommending that Players House of Rock be given until October 28, 2008 to file its application for modification of the conditional use permit. In the interim, I'm requesting a referral to the Public Safety Committee for a recommendation prior to Assembly action on rescission. I'm also requesting the licensing clerk to give the ABC Board and Players House of Rock notice that the Assembly is postponing action to rescind Assembly approval of the restaurant designation until the modification hearing has been set, and that the Assembly is giving Players House of Rock until October 28, 2008 to file the application for modification.
Is that all?
That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Coffey, you're next in the queue.
Just a procedural question. There's two types of modifications to the conditional use. There's a minor modification and there's a major modification, and I just wanted to be clear which of the two it was or it is intended to be.
Ms. Drummond?
They both have to go through staff. One requires a public hearing, the other does not. That's the major difference between the two.
I think we want the public hearing, so that would be a major modification.
All right, so that's a major modification that will require public hearing. Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Coffey?
No.
Mr. Gutierrez, and I would just ask as chair that you, in addition to your comments, you indicate whether as chair of the Public Safety Committee you have any opposition to take.
That was entirely what I was going to speak to, Mr. Chairman. I would echo or would concur with the thoughts of taking this to the Public Safety Committee. We will take it up promptly and deal with it as quickly as possible.
And in my capacity as chair, I will refer it to the Public Safety Committee. It's been moved and seconded. I see no one else in the queue. Is there any opposition to taking this matter up on the 28th with the requirement that Players House submit their application as made in this motion?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr.
I didn't think we were to take it up. I thought the motion was to have them do the conditional use application by that date, refer it to the Public Safety Committee, and when the committee was done and the conditional use had been vetted by staff, then we would put it on the agenda.
I believe you are correct, Mr. Coffey. So it is not on the agenda for the 28th. I appreciate that correction. That point of order is well taken. So the motion is to require their filing by that date. Any opposition to that motion? Hearing and seeing no opposition, that is approved unanimously. That concludes item 9G11. We don't want. Okay, that brings us next to item 13A. AR 2008-179, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcoholic beverages conditional use in the B3 General Business District for a package store use and license for AMC 21.4180D.8 for Walmart Superstore number 2188 located at 18600 Eagle River Road within Eaglewood Subdivision Tract A, generally located on the southeast corner of Eagle River Road and Eagle River Loop Road. Let me just check, has the public hearing been, I don't think we've opened the public hearing on it. Or it was continued. The public hearing, to the extent it was open before, it is still open. Anyone wishing to be heard on this, please come forward. If there's more than one here to be heard, what I would ask people to do to facilitate, if you want to be heard, come and sit in the first two rows so I know you want to be heard, and the first person could come down and start speaking first.
Mr. Chairman, why that's occurring, perhaps one of the reasons we continued the public hearing was to get the comments of the community council, and I know they were received at the clerk's office, but I don't have them in front of me. Do others?
Yes.
Okay, I know what it was because I went to the meeting, but I thought there was a written letter sent in.
I have an Eagle River. Oh no, that's something else. Okay.
Okay.
The resolution. Well, we can figure that out. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Let us know your name.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson and Assembly members, for your patience with this matter and continuing all these. My name is Austin Zimiga, Z-I-M-I-G-A. I am the store manager of the Walmart 2188 at Eagle River. Walmart is looking for approval on this conditional use permit with the following concessions that have already been made through the interaction with the Eagle River Community Council. Number one, no alcohol will be sold by single units such as single-serve beer, travel or trial-size liquor. All beverages will be sold in multi-pack form, wine by the bottle or box, and spirits by the fifth or larger. The hours of operation will be from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday and noon till 10 p.m. on Sunday. No alcohol will be sold to anyone without a valid ID. No ID, regardless of age. You do not buy alcohol in our facility. And all of our registers will also prompt to input the birth date of the ID that is given and to proceed with a valid transaction. By design, the liquor box in itself has no entrance from the inside of the building. To access it, you would have to come in through its own entrance on the outside of the building, keeping those from underage from accidentally wandering into the liquor box. Another concession that we have just made is the only signing that will be posted on the outside of this building would be any type of legal signing. There will be no neon lights, no Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders posters or things of that nature up on the outside of this building. We have already completed the first phase of computer-based learning on all of our register operator associates on the proper sale of alcohol. The training modules cover underage drinking, fake ID, and proper refusal on sale to an inebriated customer. This is an advance of certification which will be required through the TAM card process, and also additional training will be required. All associates who show interest in working in the liquor box must be 21 years of age and must successfully complete all training and will be held accountable to full extent of the law and to Walmart corporate policies. In closing, we would like to provide our customers with a one-stop shopping experience. We would like to compete with Cars and Fred Meyers in our neighborhood and wish to be treated fairly in this matter. We would like the same consideration as any other retailer has received, and I thank you very much for your time and the chance to finally get to speak to you tonight.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere. Mr. Starr has a question or two.
Oh, that was just from before. I found the comments. Thank you. Sorry about that.
He doesn't have a question. You're off the hook. Next, please. You all get chances.
Hi, I'm Marvin Haken from Eagle River Lighthouse Baptist Church, and this is my first time here in the Assembly. And last week, the Community Council of the Star's in charge of voted down the liquor license for Walmart for the simple reason that we have 4 liquor stores in Eagle River already. And they're all within 2 miles of the main drag of Eagle River. Now, when people come home at night, if they want booze, they can swing in Eagle River because they have to pick up the mail or do whatever they need to do, go grocery shopping, and then they can stop at the liquor store and buy their booze and go on home. And it's not necessary for Walmart to have a liquor store, because that is in a residential district where we get kids and ballparks and just numerous items of athletic participation, and to have another liquor store is just adding problems to the alcoholism that we already have in Alaska. Anchorage has hired or bought a vehicle to go around picking up drunks already. Now, I don't think that saves money for Anchorage or for the state of Alaska when you have to hire somebody to pick up a drunk so he doesn't freeze to death. And I really don't think, personally, that I don't drink. Not that I have anything against drinking, but it's my own personal conviction that alcohol is the downfall of our nation. The more you allow it, the more you're going to get trouble. And kids are going to get booze from Ma and Pa, irregardless. But if we can keep people from getting it so easily, then I think we're on the right track. But I don't think Walmart needs that liquor store. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Thank you for coming down. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Michael DeCero. I have been working for Walmart for 12 years, all here in Alaska. I have spent 5 years working in the sporting goods department. I have been able to see the way Walmart complies with state and federal regulations. This committee strives to not only comply with laws and regulations, but to go above and beyond. Most of the requirements from Walmart are more strict than the law requires. Liquor will be handled in the same fashion. There are several other retailers in Eagle River that carry a full line of groceries, including liquor. I don't think that Walmart should be treated any differently than them. Walmart should also be able to provide a one-stop shopping location. Thank you for your consideration in this matter.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Pastor George Blood, pastor of the Lighthouse Baptist Church, which is directly across Eagle River Road from Walmart's store. And we do oppose speak out to oppose the license at Walmart for liquor. We're not opposed to Walmart. Walmart's done many good and wonderful things in the state and for the residents, but we are opposed to this license and its proximity to us and things there. We're directly across the road, and as I brought out last week at our local meeting, there are the community council. Directly next door to us is Joy Lutheran Church, and they have a day program where child care program right in it. Diagonally across the street, across the Eagle River Loop, is the Assembly of God, and they have a private day school there. Over on the other corner, the third corner, right there at that intersection, is the Lions Club, and the Lions Club has the ball fields, which even the Greening Middle School use, plus the community and many of the teams there. And so there's the whole area happens to be a residential area, a family-oriented area, and I don't see how we can consider this a family-oriented thing. And consequently, we had a business meeting at our church, being just across the street, and the business meeting there, we had a motion, and I'll just read the motion that was made. A motion was made for a written objection be drafted and submitted before the Assembly on behalf of Lighthouse Baptist Church. The motion was seconded, and I have the people that made those motions. I believe you have that letter because we sent it to the Assembly. And the motion was voted on and passed by unanimous decision of the members present and meeting. And then the other real concern that I have as a pastor and also living right in Eaglewood subdivision myself, that it is a proven fact when a liquor establishment comes into the immediate area that there is a downturn and begins a deterioration, a slow and steady decline and deterioration. I can't imagine this Assembly wanting to do that to another community in the Anchorage area. I just, that's kind of hard for me to conceive. Then, just lastly, I mentioned this.
I would ask if you could conclude. I'll give you a little bit longer to conclude.
Yeah, and just this is conclude. Someone that's more knowledgeable than myself or anyone here and wiser has said about strong drink, at the last it biteth like a serpent and stingeth like an adder. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Assembly. My name is Danny Ingram. I am a resident of Eagle River. I am also a assistant pastor at Lighthouse Baptist Church. I want to thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to speak. I am opposed to the Walmart liquor license, and the first reason is because of my biblical conviction, which I understand not everyone has those convictions, and that's okay. Second reason is because it is within a residential area, and there's nothing but housing within that area. There's no other stores except for Walmart. The third thing is, as has been brought out, there are several schools within that area. We have Gruning Middle School, we have Homestead, we have the Christian Day School, we have the Lions Park, ballpark. Within 2 miles, we have Alpine Globe, and within 5 miles, or actually 4 miles, we have Eagle River High School. Not only that, we have 8 churches within 1 mile radius of Walmart. And also the negative impact it will have on our community, and it will. I have several statistics that in 2007, the annual drug alcohol report by the Alaska State Troopers stated that alcohol abuse, not illegal drugs, is the primary cause of violent crimes within rural Alaska. And we are considered rural Alaska. Even the governor of the state of Alaska had an advisory board put together with 14 members of different statuses, and they have come up with a conclusion that how does alcohol affect Alaska? And one thing that it brought out was it cost the Alaskan people $374 million for the fiscal year, and to deal with alcohol-related problems. And the state of Alaska only brings in $12 million every fiscal year. So if you do the math, it's $249 million that the state of Alaska is in the hole because of alcohol and also drugs. I should add drugs onto that also. I'm sorry. Not only that, in Alaska has the highest fetal alcohol syndrome than any place in the world. So these are things that we have to take into consideration because it will impact our community, and this is the reason I'm bringing it out. Even our community council voted it down 17-14. And so it's not only the 6 people you see here, but there's 10 others that are standing here also in opposition to this. The question that I have is this: do we need another discount store to contribute to the problems in Alaska and more immediately within the community of Eagle River. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Flynn has a question, if you could stay put, please.
We're over here.
Okay.
All right. And I probably should ask this to some of your fellow church members, but does your church provide any treatment services for people or counseling services for people who are affected by substance abuse?
Yes, we do, in that we give counseling. I was scheduled to go see one of our members today who is in Alcoholics Anonymous right now in Anchorage. Not only that, we have another family who is battling alcoholism within their family. And the sad thing about it is we know from what we have seen in the past that it don't just affect that generation, but the next generation is being trained also.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Jan Ingram. I'm a resident of the Eagle River community. I'm also a member of the church that's here represented. There's only really 2 points I want to make besides the other things that's already been said. First of all, Walmart has brought in great opportunities into our community with bringing in the retail services. But I'm interested in knowing why they would push forward with an application for a liquor license when they've heard the voice of the people in that community. I believe that our needs, our desires, our voice should be heard above that of theirs. We were given that opportunity to vote. It was made a public notice to the community, and we came in, we voted, and we voted against it. And it just bothers me that here's this big corporation who says, give us, our voice, but we want our voice as the community. We believe, and I believe, that that's one of the biggest problems we have in our country today. Corporation is getting heard more than the people. And I want to ask you not to do that. Let our voices be heard. It's our community. We're going to live there, and we're going to suffer the results of your decision. So that would be my point.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
I want to thank you for letting us speak here. I'm Jessie Haken. I've lived in Eagle River since 1962, and I am a member of Lighthouse Baptist Church. Pretty well everything that I have here to bring to you has already been said. And we are in a neighborhood around Walmart. And I have...
Can you pull the microphone down a little bit? It's very flexible. Thank you.
Okay.
Makes it easier for us to pick you.
I have spoke once or twice to the gentleman here about why not put in a restaurant, a family restaurant, in there. And then, of course, at the council meeting, he said, well, we didn't put in the electricity or the gas or something for stoves and whatnot. But that can be done, even if they wanted. But it would give us a place to come to dinner and do our shopping. I do shop at Walmart. And there's not only the churches, but there's the schools. And I grew up, and when I left high school, I did photography. And I did the photography for the police department of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. My boss was one of the police officers. I think I had seen a lifetime of crime souped it. Those days we didn't have the ways of developing photography that we do now. I had the FBI would be standing in the dark room with the police officers talking about the different crimes. I would say 99% of those crimes were alcohol related. I have seen bodies that have been thrown out of 2- or 3-story buildings, exploded when they hit the concrete. I have seen women and men murdered. I've seen babies standing in the cribs while their dad and mother were dead, naked in the bedroom. We don't need that kind of crime here. Eagle River has been a fairly quiet place, and we don't have the crime there that we do have on Spenard and those places. So I plead with you, let's keep it that way. We don't need alcohol and all of the problems that it brings in Eagle River. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Marty Howard. I'm the store manager that I have in Walmart here in Anchorage. I think that the folks that are against this liquor store have some very valid concerns as it pertains to alcohol and the results of alcohol. I believe that Walmart does a very responsible job in dispensing regulated items such as alcohol. I think that Walmart deserves the opportunity to be able to dispense those. I personally, as a personal choice, do not drink. As a businessman, I think it's important, though, to be able to run a business and to offer customers what they're asking for. I believe that you need to go forward and allow the liquor license for the Eagle River Walmart, and I think they'll do a good job dispensing it. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Anyone else? Anyone else at all that wishes to be heard? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What is the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Is there a second? I think that should probably reflect Ms. Osiander seconded it. Any discussion?
I have some, and I also have a few amendments that I'd like to bring forth. How would you like to handle the amendments, Mr. Chairman?
What I would suggest is, if there's amendments, let's move the amendments first, and then take that up, and then after the amendments have either been adopted or not adopted, then we can go to the remainder. I would also note that we're going to break for dinner promptly at 7. That gives us about 7 more minutes to. Sure, we will break promptly at 7.
I have basically 2 amendments, and some of the topics have been discussed tonight, but I wanted to speak about the process to where we got to tonight. As past president of that community council that you talked about, it was a well-attended meeting, and I think the topic was well vetted, so I appreciate the opportunity to bring that to those folks. The historical perspective of this store is fairly unique, and I won't bore you with the details, but it is in a unique sense, and again, with my experience on planning and zoning, I've seen several large big box approvals, including this one. This one is bounded on 3 sides by residential and has a park in the front of it. So essentially it's well embedded. The nearest residential or the nearest retail is over a mile away. The residents folks are correct in that. But in that service it provides a unique situation to shop locally, walkable communities, a local flavor that could be added to that. The other historical perspective is there was 2 large debates as it relates to this topic prior to this one. One of them was the initial conception to build a store in its location. That was tumultuous, but productive and I think professionally handled. The next one was to upsize and supersize the store, if you will, Walmart Supercenter. And that's why we're addressing the topic today, to take it to a full grocery module and bring forth the other expanded items, including this, was vetted at our community council some time back. The reason I bring up the historical perspective is so far Walmart's held up their side of the bargain, and that's my opinion and my suggestion to support the conditional use, of course, with conditions to those. If Walmart hadn't produced a track record that was subsistent to the wishes and values of our community, I'd have a different tone. But personal dialogue, listen to them interact with our community on store design, on location, on mitigating techniques for noise. They moved entire loading docks and set up large concrete walls. The landscaping, the interface with the trails connection, the color of the store, rock and wood and lighting. They voted to remove the light poles in troublesome areas. So,
Mr. Starr, I would remind we're trying to keep to 2 minutes.
I think the point in that is I feel comfortable that the Walmart representatives are true to their word. So in the efforts of bringing this to the table, I'd like to move 2 amendments to the original. One of them was spoken to tonight about the exterior signage. And again, the value system of the community, we don't want to see bikini-clad marketing techniques. We don't want to see the inflatable footballs and all the other things that would be temporary signage. So in moving to add a number 3 under Section 3, it's an exterior storefront signage designating this package store shall be restricted to one permanently mounted fixture of the type similar to other departments. No exterior temporary signage shall be permitted. Interior advertising media shall not be visible from the exterior of the store.
I would just note it's actually Section 3, Number 8.
Number 8, correct. And the exterior signage, they already have, I think you'll recognize garden center or grocery. In this case, I think it'll say liquor on the outside of the store. That's essentially proposing to move that amendment, and I'd urge approval of that if there's a second.
Mr. Starr, if you could push the first motion, please. Seconded by Ms. Osiander. Thank you. And go ahead and speak to the second. Actually, this was the one on the floor, so let's consider this and act on this first.
Okay. That's all I have.
Ms. Osiander, you were in the queue. Did you want to be heard as to this proposed amendment?
Urge support.
Thank you. I will ask if there is any opposition to amendment Section 3, Number 8, this amendment to the proposal. Hearing and seeing none, that amendment is added to AO 2008-179. Mr. Starr, I think you had a second amendment.
Go ahead. I do, and it's to add a Section 6 to the resolution that we're speaking to tonight. And resolution number 6 is something that this Assembly has never done before, and that's to term limit the conditional use permit. And what I'm proposing here is this conditional use approval shall terminate April 14th of 2010 unless otherwise modified through formal action of the Anchorage Assembly.
Is there a second for that? Ms. Osiander is seconded. Mr. Starr, if you want to speak briefly to the motion.
I do briefly. Again, to me, and I've come to the resolve that and again, a contentious policy statement from my belief system is that it isn't the number of liquor stores, but it's how it's retailed and who the retail vendor is and the accountability you have to that retail vendor. And again, the historical perspective, the reason I went through that was that I feel comfortable, at least with the present representation of Walmart. We didn't see dog and pony shows or lower 48 folks coming up here and telling us all the glorious things. We got real people that live in our community that I go to, and I can say we need this. And they do that for us. Time limiting it will be an 18-month time frame, gives them 6 months probably to get the store open, and a year a track record to prove up. And I think that's an effective thing. If they fail, they don't prove up, then we modify the conditional use at the time we rehear it. And I'm pretty adamant about this one. I think a longer time frame isn't going to be effective to the accountability of the neighborhood, and too short doesn't give them a time frame. So I urge approval of this one.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Next in the queue is Ms. Osiander. I would know we're at almost a minute to go before dinner, so we probably won't get all the way through the queue. But go ahead, Ms. Osiander.
This store has been contentious for a number of years. Mr. Starr gave a good history of some of that. However, they have worked well with the various organizations, the various neighborhoods, and the various community councils. And as such, I'm inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt. That's not to belittle some of the concerns about alcohol that I heard from the parishioners of the church. There is a very strong and involved Alcoholics Anonymous group that meets regularly in Eagle River Presbyterian Church. It's a problem not only for our community, but for all of Anchorage and all of the state of Alaska. Be that as it may, I believe in equality of treatment, and I think there's a valid point made when Cars can sell liquor and Fred Meyer can sell liquor. Why say no to Walmart? The only reason I see to potentially say no is because through our screwy zoning setup, we've basically got a retail establishment in the middle of a residential neighborhood and parks. At the time when that came in, it was controversial, and it will continue to be controversial. This particular delay or relook at this will, I think, ensure that some of the continuing concerns are met. I know there have been concerns about the wooded area behind the store. There have been concerns from some Eaglewood residents that kids congregate there, and there's been some damage to the store. I'd like to give the opportunity for folks to work through that. I'd like to see how they're doing at holding through their commitments to avoid the single sale. I'd like to make sure that the folks in the neighborhood don't start seeing signs that are objectionable, big sale brochures that are objectionable. And I think there is a recognition, I hope there's a recognition from Walmart that there's a unique neighborhood there and that we're kind of conservative about some things, and we appreciate the fact that there's an acknowledgement of how we value our community and what's important to us. I have talked to the manager, and so far, I have a lot of respect for what you're doing. We're watching you, sir.
Thank you. I would note it's now 7, which is the time I plan to break for dinner. I will follow. What's that?
Could we finish this?
If the body wants to go ahead and finish at least this amendment, I'm happy to go for it, and we'll delay dinner. I don't see any objection to that. Mr. Coffey, you're next in the queue.
I'm going to be real brief. For years, we've looked for tools on liquor, and the conditional use is a very good tool. And allowing or putting a time limit on it is a perfect tool that has never been used with liquor. We've used them with things that expire by their usage. A gravel pit, 5 years, they've exhausted the gravel. First time, it's an ideal circumstance to use it, and I support it 100% and would urge us to do it. My only question is the use of the word otherwise modified, and I was just wondering from Mr. Starr whether continued would be a better word. Isn't that what we would do if we approved it, is continue it?
It may be. I didn't want to bring the interim period where they could potentially modify their conditional use permits, much as we saw Henry's tonight, I think, a secondary dispensary. So I didn't want to send mixed language. I'm open to a friendly if I don't know that formally we continue it. Actually, they apply again.
Oh, you expect them to go through a new conditional use application and spend all that money and go through the whole thing again?
Well, again, I saw a modified application tonight, sir, and it didn't seem like it was an arcane process.
Well, that's because they changed the business model. That's
yeah, I want to see them reapply.
Well, I disagree with the reapplication. I agree with the review. So if that's what you're intending, you've got a problem with me.
All right, Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Coffey sort of answered my question, which was, this is an interesting idea. Has it ever been done before? I guess the answer is no. I would note this is very similar to what we've done with the downtown area in that we've placed conditions on all the beverage or package dispensary locations, a little more prescribed than what you have here. I'm conceptually supportive. I'm not sure if you've nailed the language exactly correctly, but I am conceptually supportive of what you're doing here, Mr. Starr. Thank you.
Thank you. The clerk asked a question, which I will direct to either the Department of Law or Assembly Counsel, as to whether Section 6 raises any issues as to Title 21. It's a pretty broad question, but that was a question whether this raises any Title 21 concerns. And that may actually cause us to want to wait to decide on this till after dinner.
If I can speak to that resolution intention a little bit, the modification of the amendment is that I would anticipate that Walmart would probably come to one of their assembly members at that time, whether it probably will be me, is that because I'll still be on the term, they would probably come to say, can you modify this action? What are we talking about? I would hope that they come to us and say, can you modify, 2008-179? So formally, we could adopt a modification of this resolution and head off the need to apply for a permit. But I think the whole point is to bring the action in front of the public with all the scrutiny of police reports and that. So my intention, their other process would be that they could come and ask us to modify a resolution 2008-179 before the expiration date.
All right. Ms. Westover, I see you in the queue.
Mr. Chair, would it be possible for Mr. Starr to provide us with the language that he's proposing, and we could consider it during the lunch break and come back to you?
Not only that, but we'll do it during the dinner break. All right, we will recess for dinner during this so that we have some time to review the question that's been raised as to essentially what is the best language for this amendment, which we don't really, I think that a lot of this is a technical question, which is appropriate to take up outside the regular meeting, and we can tell us what we decided during the dinner.
Good. And point of clarity, just to make sure the public knows, we don't have an open debate in the back room. Everything's done on the public. We go to dinner and don't talk about it. So
the only thing we'll be discussing is whether the rice was cooked properly or not. All right, we're going to be in recess approximately 30 minutes. Appreciate your tolerance while we take our dinner break. This amendment to amendment that adds Section 6. Hearing and seeing none, that is adopted. Now as to the underlying Section 6 as amended, is there any other, I see no one else in the queue on that, is there any opposition to the addition of Section 6 as amended? Hearing and seeing none, that too is adopted into the ordinance. That brings us to the main motion as amended. Anyone wishing to be heard on that? I don't see anyone in the queue. And so I will ask if there is any opposition. Mr. Gutierrez, thank you. I looked and there was no one. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I got in late.
No, I sometimes look once and then don't look again.
This is, I have to say, we're just one day shy of 6 months of me being on this assembly. And this is the hardest decision I feel that I've had to make since I've been here. This is something that typically I would defer to the wishes of the two members from this area. It's their community. They know it better than I do. And I'm very cognizant of that, and I'm very open to that and hearing that. On the other hand, we're hearing from the community that they don't want it. And I know it was not a unanimous vote at the community council level. It was 17 opposed, I believe, 13 in favor. We haven't heard from anyone tonight who is in favor of this who's not connected to Walmart. And while I don't have any personal axe to grind with Walmart, they have a vested interest. So, of course, they're going to be in favor of this. While I am not personally a teetotaler, I don't drink. It's not because I have any opposition to it. It's because I'm a diabetic and not generally something my doctor would approve of. I don't have any opposition to alcohol per se. I grew up in a Catholic family in a church of Franciscans, and it wasn't a church festival if we didn't have a beer garden. So, alcohol is not something I have any particular opposition to, but it became clear when I moved to this state that alcohol really is the great scourge of this state. It really is, from public health to crime, public safety. There are a lot of problems. At the same time, I don't want to punish people who can use alcohol responsibly, just to keep it out of the hands of those who cannot. But the other argument that resonated with me that we heard from one of the people who spoke was that, we from the national level to the state level to this assembly, big business gets what big business wants, whether it's good for the community or not. I guess the old argument is what's good for GM is good for the country. What's good for Walmart is good for Anchorage, apparently. What's good for Walmart selling liquor in Eagle River is good for Eagle River. Therefore, they should get it. And I think this is a national problem. I think it's a problem from the top to the bottom. And honestly, I still haven't made up my mind, Mr. Chairman, which button I'm going to push when we vote on this. I know that I will probably be the lone voice in the wilderness if I vote no, and I'm okay with that. But this has been a very difficult decision, and I think it's a discussion that we as a community need to have. What are our values? What's important to us? Do we really want to listen to people who live in a given area? Are their views as important or even close to as important as commercial interests in that area. And I'm not sure this body would say it is. That may be a good thing, that may be a bad thing. I haven't made up my mind entirely on that. But this is going to be a difficult choice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, that got the queue going. Ms. Osiander.
Mr. Gutierrez, it may help you to know that basically this license has been in the community for quite a while. It was a purchased license from another liquor facility in the Chugiak area that is basically leaving Chugiak then and moving this way if this is approved. The second thing that may help you or may not is that this has been discussed fairly heavily throughout Eagle River for about, almost a year now. Once the whole decision about the superstore was open, it's been covered in our paper, the Star, fairly well. And there is not a uniform opinion on this, sir, based on the conversations I've heard. There are people who think it's just fine and people who are upset about it. My sense is the community council discussion was probably pretty reflective in that there were a variety of opinion. Eagle Wood Homeowners Association, who was very heavily involved in the initial Walmart discussion, chose not to weigh in on this one. So I guess that's it. Just to tell you, there's not one opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coffey.
There's little or no question but that alcohol abuse is a horrific thing. We deal with it everywhere in our town and in our state. But we tried prohibition. It was a colossal failure. We created a criminal class worth billions. We're still paying for that price. And so what I do is I understand that there's problems associated with it, but I say to myself, do you say this isn't in the world and you make it prohibited and you drive it back the way it was, like we've done with drugs today, and we've been as unsuccessful in that as we have with alcohol? Or do you look to the people who are purveyors of this and do you require them to be responsible people? And I don't view this as some sort of class warfare thing where the corporation wins over the neighborhood. I view this as a way in which people who we're dealing with a substance that can cause great harm if abused, and how do we deal with that fact, since we know prohibition doesn't work? And so, for me, it's a question of the operation and the operator rather than some inherent evil in the product which they are selling. So I will support this, particularly with the amendments Mr. Starr and Ms. Osiander brought forward. Thank you.
Dr. Selcraig.
I appreciate Mr. Gutierrez's concerns. I think we're all thoughtful about the importance of being respectful of individuals and of the community in the face of powerful entities. And I guess, and I listening, I think we all come here and we are listening. And I think there was compelling presentation tonight. However, I think ultimately, for me, it's not an issue of siding with big business or siding with corporations or siding with an individual or siding with a neighborhood. I think it's doing our very best to interpret the laws before us and trying to figure out what's fair. And it seems to me that Walmart has come forward and asked for a liquor license in a zoning designation where it's allowed. And we have other liquor facilities around it. They've met the requirements in terms of the distance from the school. They've been willing to reduce their hours. And we did hear from individuals this evening who have a strong sense about alcohol, and I think who would be against any establishment anywhere, any increase. And we could talk about that and argue that. But we're not talking about prohibition tonight. We're talking about whether or not this makes sense in this site. So, I'm still deliberating, but I think that it's important to realize that it is not, at least I think our work is not to be on a side of one entity or the other, but to try to figure out under the law what's appropriate and really review this in the context of that. Thank you.
I see no one else in the queue. I will just note, because this appears to be a question that may not have a unanimous vote from the body, that these are tough decisions, and I think at the same time, whether this were Walmart or whether it was a mom and pop grocery store, that if they follow the requirements of the law in applying, I think from my perspective, we need to give them an opportunity to show that they can be good corporate citizens, whether they be a small corporation or a large corporation. Earlier tonight, we approved a transfer of the ownership of Brown Jug to local, up from local ownership to ownership by a primarily Canadian organization. And here with Walmart, I mostly think, well, my question is going to continue to be when they come back in a year and a half is, have they been the kind of responsible citizens that Brown Jug has set an example in this community? And from what I heard in the discussion, I think that Walmart is committed to doing that. And so I'm going to support this, but I'm also glad that it'll be back in 18 months for a further review. So with that, please vote. A yes will approve this conditional use, a no will not. That passes by a vote of 10-1. That brings us next to item 14A, AO 2008-64, an ordinance authorizing long-term lease between the municipality of Anchorage as lessor and Aerometric Incorporated as lessee of Lot 4, Block 5, Merrill Field replat located between Taxiway, Quebec and Merrill Field Drive. The public hearing on this matter is now open. Anyone wishing to be heard, please come forward. A moment for the room to clear. I see no one coming forward with regard to this lease. The public hearing in this matter is now closed. What is the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Mr. Starr is seconded. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Is there any opposition to approval of item 14A? Hearing and seeing none, that is approved unanimously. That brings us now to item 14B. AR 2008-191, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, confirming and levying assessments for the sewer special improvements within levy upon connection roll 08-S-2, setting date of payment and providing for penalties and interest in the event of delinquency. Anyone wishing to be heard on this matter, the public hearing is now open. Please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What is the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved by Ms. Osiander, seconded. Mr. Coffey got there first.
That's
I see. Oh, Mr. Gutierrez, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just noticed Section 2, line 20, actually starting on line 19, Assembly held a public hearing on blank 2008. Let's fill in the blank.
That'll be October 14, 2008.
Thank you.
What's that? The clerk notes that those are filled in administratively because the public hearing they're referring to is the one we just held. All right. I see no one else in the queue. Any opposition to approval of item 14B? Hearing and seeing none, that is approved unanimously. That brings us next to item 14C, AR 2008-208, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $175,000 from tax-exempt master lease proceeds to the Finance Department to purchase and upgrade remittance processing equipment and to amend the 2008 general government capital budget to include the aforementioned equipment purchase. The public hearing on this matter is now open. Anyone wishing to be heard, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. What is the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Seconded by Ms. Gray-Jackson, moved by Ms. Osiander. Any opposition to approval of item 14C? Hearing and seeing no opposition, that item is approved unanimously. Next is item 14D, item AR 2008-186, a resolution ratifying a 5-year collective bargaining agreement between the Municipality of Anchorage and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 302. Anyone wishing to be heard, please come forward. We have somebody this one. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let us know who you are.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and fellow Assembly members. My name is Jason Allward. I'm with Local 302. The collective bargaining unit that we are here representing tonight is about 155 members strong, from street maintenance, Merrill Field, Port of Anchorage, solid waste services at both Anchorage Regional Landfill and CTS, Central Transfer Station. I don't believe there will be any public testimony other than mine, but I would like to have everyone that is here this evening who is in attendance in support of this contract, I'd like to have them stand up. Thank you. We recently had the task of working with City Hall administration to negotiate this contract, negotiate the terms of this. We feel that we were able to reach a fair agreement, which later was ratified by these employees. The terms we negotiated were not only negotiated in good faith, but they also conform to the guidelines of AR 2007-084. So we're here tonight asking that for your support by voting to ratify this contract. Thank you for your time.
I don't see anyone with questions. Anyone else wishing? Thank you for coming down, though. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is now closed. What is the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Seconded by Ms. Gray Jackson. Anybody wishing to be heard on this? I see no one in the... Mr. Coffey, I thought we'd get some...
Just have a couple questions of the administration, if I might. On the memorandum on AM 563-2008, down at lines 26 and 27, it requires employees to share in increases in health benefits over the life of the contract. What's the percentage going to now, Mike?
I'm going to defer to Lisa and David.
I'll direct it to you.
Okay, Mr. Coffey, that's the 50-50 split.
All right, and what was it before?
Could you speak into the microphone, actually, sir?
I'll let Lisa speak to that.
I will speak to that. In the year 2009, the Local 302 has been very responsible in managing their health care, and they have come forward with a zero increase for 2009. So there's no increased cost to the municipality, and likewise, there's no increased cost to their membership. In 2010, we have agreed to negotiate and go back and discuss any increase over $90 with the understanding and language in the contract that says there will be a shared responsibility between both the municipality and the membership. Beyond 2010, it was very difficult for them to predict, and as such, there are openers in the contract that allows us to continue to negotiate with the understanding that there will be a shared responsibility between both the municipality and the Local 302 members.
Mr. Coffey, does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much, I think. And then I have another question for either Mr. Otto or Mr. Abbott. Relative to the resolution the Assembly passed some 3 or 4 years ago, is this compliant with that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
In what respects? All 5 categories?
Actually, there's 7 categories.
7 categories? Well, I didn't have it in front of me again.
Right. I've got copies, if the Assembly would like that for their reference at this time. You mentioned, or we talked about employee benefits. That was the first item on the AR 2007-84. The second one was that the administration would take steps to reduce PERS obligations. That's not germane in this issue. This group is a member of the operating engineer's own pension system. So PERS really isn't a factor affecting these members. We're directed by the Assembly to negotiate to eliminate service recognition and longevity compensation. This group was not eligible for that. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
No.
I apologize. I misstated on that. Lisa, would you please clarify what the status of this is?
Yes, like the contracts that had come to you before, the Teamster contract and the Local 71, we did freeze service recognition in place, and in lieu of that, we have implemented a performance step program that is similar to Teamsters and Local 71.
I apologize, Mr. Coffey.
Mm-hmm. No, I read the memo. It said that in there, so I knew you were.
The fourth item is that the administration is expected by the Assembly to negotiate annual wage adjustments that do not exceed the average of the previous 5 years' CPI. We've negotiated 2 years firmly set in this contract and set boundaries for years in the future beyond that, a range of them. We haven't set the actual number because it's not calculable at this time. That would be for the 3rd year of the contract. fourth and fifth years are subject to wage reopeners.
Those are the only reopeners, right? Just wages.
I believe that's correct. Lisa, I'm looking at you and the health benefits that we talked about before.
The only other opener that we put in the contract, there's no obligation on the municipality for this one, but it would pertain to their retirement contributions in years 2012 and 2013.
I didn't understand that.
We have a fixed employer contribution tied to, I believe it's hours worked. Lisa, is that correct, or is it just a flat monthly basis?
It's tied to compensable hours.
And so we have that fixed for the 3 years, and then they're subject to wage reopener, or not wage, but subject to reopener in years 4 and 5.
Okay. What else on the resolution?
Item 5 is the administration is expected to eliminate work rules and all other processes that result in costly administrative processes and procedures with little or no true added value. Lisa, you might mention some of the progress we've made in that area.
Yes, some of the items that we have made progress on this area has to do with simplifying the major factors for promotions that was somewhat problematic throughout the life of the contract. It brings the current blood donation leave, court leave in compliance with the municipal policy. It was more generous in their contract, and now they are in compliance with the municipal policy. And another item that is of significance is the elimination of injury leave payments for these members. Currently, the municipality supplements an employee's income to keep them whole when they're out. We have negotiated and eliminated that supplemental payment by the municipality.
Mr. Chairman, item 6 requires the administration to, or expects the administration to engage the workforce, including the bargaining representatives, in identifying more efficient means to carry on the work of the municipality. I should note that the operating engineers are one of the best bargaining groups we have in terms of their active participation in the improvement of business processes and the work that they do. Street maintenance in particular is greatly appreciates the individual contributions and the collective contributions of the members towards the improvement of their work processes. The 7th and last is the administration is expected by the Assembly to work jointly with the Assembly to address and discuss funding of rising costs of employee benefits. I don't really think that's the subject of an individual contract. So in essence, Mr. Chairman, I believe that this contract proposal does comply with the elements of that were set out in 2007-84.
Okay, and then my last question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Coffey.
My last question is, when I read the summary of economic effects and I read Mr. Rascom's analysis, there's no reflection on the cost benefits accruing. All you've done is report to me what the wage increases will cost. And if we're achieving savings through these other things like sharing health care benefits and work rules and so on, to what degree can they be quantified? And if they can be, why aren't they reported in here in the summary of economic effects?
Mr. Abbott, if you can, or someone.
Sure. We're not at this point capable of quantifying those benefits. We may be able to over time, especially the provisions having to do with injury leave. We may be able to compare that to previous years' expenses associated with injury leave. But at this point, I'm not prepared to give you a bankable number, if you will, associated with the savings associated with those improvements.
Okay. So I guess we could say the wages and benefits that are cost we know, and the others we hope or take on faith.
Yes. I should also mention, just for general information, this contract is consistent with the 2009 budget proposal that was approved by the Assembly last year and is again before you for action for 2009.
For the 3 years that we know of.
For 2009, the 2009 provisions of the contract are funded in the budget that you've got. So we won't be seeking supplemental funding or changes in the 2009 budget to address anything in this contract.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may be kind of an off-the-wall question to the administration on this issue. I noticed we've eliminated voting time. how much did we actually save by eliminating voting time?
I actually don't have that number here with me today, and voting time was not paid time. Voting time was allowing and guaranteeing employees time off to vote. Presently, the work shifts within these bargaining units have the opportunity to vote before they report to work or to report after they report to work. So this was what we viewed more as an administrative efficiency as far as not having to free folks up in the middle of the day when they're out doing their jobs rather than having to release them from their duties.
This is actually very troubling for me because the single most important thing any citizen can do is vote. And if it's not a significant, I'm actually kind of shocked that you guys would negotiate that away. But if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. I'd also note there's also jury duty. Ms. Osiander.
Concerns me, Mr. Abbott, is frequently, in my experience, when you negotiate a contract, you can do pro and con with providing increased wages and benefits, and then you can maybe sometimes get something with other language that's beneficial. And I can see, and I agree with you, that the first 3 years are in accord with the document we passed, but you've got 2 other years here where the language is set on everything except financial. And I don't see what the benefit to the city is for those other 2 years when potentially some of our leverage for dealing with the financial is already given.
If you mean the wage reopeners, is that the...
Well, there's wage reopeners, and I just heard that there's also retirement reopeners, and there's health reopeners on those years, and that's the big 3 on financial. And so the only thing that stays is everything else, which might be some things that we would like to get in order to afford increases in the other.
Sure. And what has happened in the past on wage reopeners that we've been involved in is, to the extent that we've had to bargain for those, and that's implied certainly in this, if the administration wants to achieve changes in the other elements of the contract, they can use the leverage associated with a wage reopener to do that. The wage reopener is at the discretion of either party. So in other words, what's that?
So it's sort of implicit it will happen.
Right. There will be bargaining in years 4 and 5 of this contract. It's a question, it'll be up to both parties to determine how much of the contract is exposed to that bargaining.
No, the only part that's open are those 3 financials, correct? Or did I misunderstand you?
The only part that are required to be bargained are those pieces.
Right.
If, for instance, the bargaining unit comes forward and says, we'd like 4% in year 4, and the administration says, no, the CPI or whatever the administration at that time decides they'd rather have, they say, no, we want 2%. At that point, nothing precludes the parties from renegotiating other elements of the contract. In fact, that's happened since we've been here, that to take advantage of that and to resolve other issues that have come up. So to the extent that both parties agree at the bargaining table, any other element of the contract can be reopened.
Okay, maybe I should phrase this differently. Why didn't you just negotiate a 3-year contract?
It provides both parties the opportunity to retain those elements of the contract if they're so inclined. And if they can reach an accommodation on simply the items that are available for reopening, that's allowable. It doesn't require that the other elements of the contract be reopened, but it allows for the flexibility of either the next administration or the bargaining unit to bring those issues back before you, or back before at the table and potentially back to you.
Which it would anyway if it was a 3-year contract.
At least yes, a 3-year contract would come back.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I've said before, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Osiander, that this has the benefits of being a 5-year contract, but it does not create the risks to the employer and to the employee either that would be associated with locking in all of the economic factors for the full 5 years. So I believe it provides the next administration, as well as the bargaining unit, the flexibility to either maintain the language that exists right now or to reopen it. And in that regard, I believe it is advantageous to both parties to structure it in this way. And I think that's why administrations have brought this type of contract forward for many, many years.
Okay, I see no one else in the queue. I will put this on the board for voting. A yes vote will approve this contract, a no vote will not. Please vote.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I asked questions. I didn't say anything, and
okay.
I thought we were going to have a lot more questions, and so I'd like to just make my views.
Okay. We will hold off on voting. I will go ahead and let people be heard. Mr. Coffey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have two issues that come up, and I've talked to my colleagues, some of my colleagues, and I understand, as Mr. Abbott says, there's sides to both of them. One of the things is what Ms. Osiander just mentioned, a 3-year contract. We've got a 3-year contract. I can support this as a 3-year contract. What's troubling to me is when you get into the 4th and 5th year is that it seems to me we have disadvantaged the municipality, and perhaps even more particularly, we may have disadvantaged the next administration. This administration will be gone in July, and the next mayor, while he has or she has the wage reopeners and the health care benefits and these other things that may be on the table, much of the contract set. I prefer to allow at least each administration to deal with its labor relations and have the full amount of flexibility to do so as it sees fit. And so that's one of the problems. And the other problem is that the disadvantage that's accrued to the municipality from having a reopener that is limited in its scope. The other thing that's troublesome to me, but is I voted for that resolution 4 years ago or whenever it was. But what is troubling to me is I look at the private sector where people are not represented or don't work for the government. And the problem is that many of those individuals don't get cost of living increases every year. They have the same wage this year as they had last year, and maybe the year before, and maybe even the year before that. And so their real wages go down. And those who are fortunate enough to work for the government or are represented by collective bargaining units, which is longstanding, and I don't have any problem with that, have a benefit that accrues to them rather than to us, or rather than to those who don't have that ability. And those people pay taxes too, and at some point in time, I don't know how we rectify that problem over time. I mean, it's harmful to these folks to say, well, you got to suffer with the rest of them. But then on the other hand, how do you ask people who own their homes and pay their taxes and don't get these wage increases to pay for those who do? That to me is problematic. So in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, if this were for 3 years and the next administration had a chance to renegotiate it, I would support it, even though I have those concerns about cost of living increases. Since it's 5 years and I don't see any benefit to the municipality from doing that, I will not support it with 5 years, although I would at 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. I recognize you're kind of pushing the limits of our mutual agreement to try to keep our comments to 2 minutes, and I remind the others of our efforts. Ms. Osiander, go ahead.
In a response to the previous speaker, there are organized employee groups that work with private business too. And oftentimes, I think maybe the comparison between organized labor and individual labor isn't, it may be that people who are in bargaining groups get better deals, but that's why they're in bargaining groups. And so I don't think it's, for me at least, a valid issue to say that some people don't have this kind of benefits. The other point I wanted to make is I believe strongly that the collective bargaining process is a legitimate process that should be honored. I do think that it's vital that this body states their concerns before bargaining starts in terms of an agreement that outlines what kind of economic parameters we're comfortable with. And I would strongly urge this body, if they have any concerns that we're being too generous in one particular area or have too much concerns about length of contract, that we put some teeth into the document when we have a chance to work on it again. Ms. Gray-Jackson has mentioned several times that there are specific timelines when we can do that. I believe that we are not bargaining. Ms. Drummond and I have had the experience of actually doing that more hands-on the school board. The Assembly doesn't operate that way. And as such, I have to buy in to what the administration has done, as long as, to me, it meets the guidelines that we set. So I'm going to support this contract, but I'm also of the belief that we need to really work hard on the next time we get those guidelines in front of us, to be sure that they do fulfill what we can afford. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Selcraig.
I appreciate Ms. Osiander's comments. I, too, believe in collective bargaining, and I don't think we're up here to renegotiate a contract. I think we're here to either approve it or not approve it. And the other thing that I think needs to be recognized is that there are all different sorts of bargaining units out there, and the fact is that if you work for BP or ConocoPhillips, you do get raises. That it isn't just bargaining units right now that are getting raises, but it's the recognition, if you want to retain people, it's the work that employers have to do, is that they have to recognize that people are living on less and less even when they get the raises, because we're looking at 6 and 7% inflation, and we're looking at an agreement before us that doesn't even keep up with that inflation. And the last thing is that I do believe we are in this collective bargaining unit. We're here to do that, but also that as a municipality and as a government agency, I think it matters how we treat our employees. I think that if employees are in certain sectors are falling behind, I think we want to work to create better jobs, and we want those employees to make more money. I don't think we want to reduce everybody to the lowest common denominator. I think that that's part of what's happened in the country, and that there's got to be real work for working people to make sure that they're moving forward, and that this contract, I think, is an attempt to do that. So I will be supporting it tonight, and I'm appreciative of the work that went into this contract, and I'm appreciative to both sides, because I think this reflects a lot of give and take, and it's a risk. I mean, a 5-year contract is a risk on both sides. We all don't exactly know what's going to happen, and I'm glad to see those openers in the later years, because we may have some important things to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Birch.
I just had a kind of more of a question and a clarification on the memo that describes the 3% proposed increase. The resolution that was passed, the 2007-84, stipulates that the administration is expected by the Assembly to negotiate annual wage adjustments that do not exceed the average of the previous 5-year CPI. When we see the proposed increase, for instance, in the first page of 3%, the total earnings and wages and overtime actually are about $6 million. So 3% of that would be $180,000, which would be the wage component. But it appears that that 3% is being applied across the board to taxes, benefits, and everything. And I guess my clarification question would be, is that percentage increase actually applied to the full cost, loaded cost, or just the wage cost as described in the Assembly resolution?
Through the chair, Mr. Birch, it is applied to the entire package, so like PERS, all of the different...
Make sure your microphone's on.
I'm sorry, when Peter Raskin's cost this out with our payroll supervisor, they take it fully loaded. So there's great impacts. Once you raise a wage, it's going to have an impact then on all the other benefits structured around that raise. So you're seeing the full real cost.
Right, but I'm looking at the resolution that stipulates that that the administration is expected by the Assembly to negotiate annual wage adjustments and benefit increases was struck out that do not exceed the average of the previous year's CPI. And so I guess, so I mean, you got a percentage increase on footwear allowance, apprentice and training programs and everything. And I'm trying to understand if it seems like it's including excessive costs there.
Through the chair, I believe, Mr. Birch, that it's consistent with the resolution of 2007-84, which is negotiate annual wage adjustments where the benefit piece was taken out. My only point about being fully loaded is the fact that when you do a 3% increase or any percent increase, there's going to be other factors in your pay structure that will have an automatic slope upward because of that. So to give you the true cost, we want to make sure, and Peter's really careful about making sure that you get the true picture of the financials of this contract.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to save some time and just echo Ms. Selkirk's comments, but I'd also like to say that I took a quick look at the resolution that was passed in March of 2007, and it seems to me that through this negotiation process that the guidelines were met. And I heard a couple of comments about the fact that it is not a 3-year contract, and I'd just simply like to say if the previous Assembly wanted the administration to look at a 3-year contract, they might have thought about included in the resolution that they approved in March of 2007. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston.
This is our third contract, right? Am I correct? And the first two, what was the term of those contracts?
The last contract was 5 years, which was Local 71.
Use your mic, please. I know you're responding to her, but it helps us if you actually speak into the microphone.
I apologize. It was Local 71. The Teamsters one, the last minute, had been reduced from 5 to 3.
And Local 71 was a 5-year contract?
That's correct. It's essentially the same contract in terms and conditions of this contract here.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnston, anything else? All right. I see no one else in the queue. I will note that I'm going to vote in support of this contract. One of the great lessons from my law school days was a labor professor who explained that when you're looking at labor negotiations, the best model for kind of the harsh realities of labor bargaining is professional football. He went through a long discussion, and I won't bore you with those details. If you want to talk to me about it later, I'll be happy to explain more. But one of the things I've learned from watching the labor negotiations in professional sports is that all the parties seem to benefit by the longer terms of contracts. And when they get a new commissioner in or new owners for the different clubs, I've never heard anyone complain about the length of the bargains they strike in terms of the collective bargaining agreements. And so I hear what Mr. Coffey says about the concerns about limiting options for the next administration, whoever may be the mayor. But I keep seeing in the private sector where bargaining agreements are made for 3, 5, and 7-year periods, that in the end all the parties seem much happier with the longer terms than the shorter terms, and that's not just the employees, it's both employer and employee. So I'm very comfortable with the 5-year period, and I will be voting in support. So having said that, please vote. A yes vote approves this contract, a no vote does not. Please vote.
Dr. Zuckery, Ms. Drummond, Mr. Starr. Ms. Drummond? There.
That is approved by a vote of 8-3. That next brings us to item 14E. This is an appointment. Do we need a public hearing on this? I believe so. Okay. This is item AM 609-2008, Employee Relations Board Appointments, Roxanne Roweeder. Anyone wishing to be heard with regard to this appointment, please come forward. I see everyone moving out of the room, no one moving into the room. The public hearing is closed. What is the wish of the body?
Move to accept.
Move to approve, I think.
Approve.
Made and seconded by Ms. Osiander. Thank you. Is there, I see no one in the queue. Any opposition to approval of 14E? Item 14E, seeing no opposition, that is approved unanimously. That brings us next to item 14F, AO 2008-102, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage adopting and appropriating funds for the 2009 updated general government operating budget for the Municipality of Anchorage. The public hearing, this is the first of 3 public hearings on the budget. We will not be taking action on this tonight, but the public hearing on this is now open. Okay. And so that would be 14G, F, G, H, I, J, and K. Okay. Clarifying things. Let's start over. I would ask if there is a motion to consolidate items 14F through 14K.
Move to consolidate the public hearing on the budget items.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Is there any opposition to consolidating the public hearing and the budget items? Hearing and seeing no opposition, items 14F through 14K are consolidated. I can read them all unless there's a request to waive reading. There's an application to waive reading. Hearing and seeing no objection. We are at the public hearing on budget. Wait just a moment. I have to change. Okay. Go ahead. Let us know your name.
Okay. Chairman Clayman, members of the Assembly, Administration, my name is Kathleen Plunkett, and I'm speaking as an individual tonight. While I have many passions, from parks to safety to our kids and our community, I'm going to concentrate on just a couple of key items within the budget, both operating and capital, so I'm glad you combined it. I won't have to pick it apart. While I do not mind volunteering to clean up graffiti, and I consider it very, very important that it get removed, I think it's appalling that we only have one graffiti buster within this city. It's kind of hard to depend on citizens to do everything that they need to get rid of it. And it's really key and important for a number of reasons within our city, and I know I've talked to a number of you about it, but when you said I know Mike in particular had said he was interested in working on it, I went, I need to come and follow up and testify and let you all know that I think that that's one of the most key important things we can do, is to actually put resources so that it does not stay. And we take back our parks, we take back our buildings where we have that on. It's very, very important for all of the different items that I'm passionate about. The other thing I just wanted to mention, which is more of a capital item, is for the fire department, both Station 3 and 6. While I know we have some legislative money and hopefully we'll get more in the future, both of those East Side fire stations are very key and important, and I'd sure like to see those improved. And then the last thing from looking at the budget was I looked at the APD budget, and there's a couple of items there that to me are real key, and safety is one of my number one important things, and that was the SROs, the support of the SROs and the work in there, as well as Weed and Seed. And while both the East Anchorage Weed and Seed as well as the Mountain View Weed and Seed do a lot and work for that, I'm real appreciative of the police department stepping up and putting some funds in there for that feature as well. And that's the end of my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Osiander may have a question for you. Go ahead, Ms. Osiander.
What do you think of the overall size of the budget Is there anything that you think we should cut back in?
You know, I wish I could say I'd spent more time working on the budget yet and looking at it, and unfortunately I haven't done it, and I'm not going to be in town for the 28th, so I went, and I hate doing it on the last night because there's lots of people. There probably are areas where we could cut back as well as part where we could increase, but I wish I could tell you I've gone to that level of detail, but...
And the clerk reminds that you can certainly submit written testimony.
That's true. Thank you.
This is your one chance to testify, but you can certainly submit written comments. And the budget actually process, we're going to have 3 public hearings on the budget. The third will be on November 18th. So you actually have time to prepare your written comments if you choose.
This is true.
Dr. Selcraig has a question for you.
Ms. Plunkett, thank you for coming out tonight. Are you familiar with the graffiti buster concept that's related to crime reduction and the broken window theory? Do you know about that?
Yeah, and the visual aspect. I mean, that's why it's been very important for me to the last 3 years. I've taken over a couple of parks and removed the graffiti pretty regularly. Some I've been successful on, and some have not. But it definitely it also increases the pride in the neighborhood when it's gone.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, Ms. Plunkett lives about 3 blocks from my house, so in addition to written testimony, she knows where I live. So
that's right.
Please feel free to drop by.
All right, I see no one else in the queue. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to be heard tonight on the budget? Go ahead, Mr. Whitaker.
My name is Jed Whitaker. I'd like to include in the budget some money to put 20-mile-an-hour signs on 25th, 26th, and 27th between Arctic and Spenard. And it does fit into the broken window theory of crime because you could, by installing speed bumps, which I hope would also get into the budget, it would prevent people from cruising up and down the street, and it would also help for pedestrian safety. I'd also like to see in the budget monies for crosswalks on Spenard Road on the corners of 25th, 26th, and 27th, and also money for a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign on Spenard between Firewood and Northern Lights, and also money for the planning process to close the egress of Chilkoot Charlie parking lot on 25th and 26th to incorporate new egress of Chilkoot Charlie's parking lot onto Spenard Road. I've had previous conversations with Ms. Drummond. She told me that the traffic engineers are not hep to the idea of Chilkoot Charlie's emptying onto Spenard Road. I'd just like to point out that their clientele is in the evening, not during the day, and that I don't think that it would negatively impact traffic on Spenard Road. The overall impact of this would make Spenard more walkable and much more pleasant place to live, in addition to reducing crime. So there's actually cost savings when you think about changing the speed limits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Drummond had a question. I didn't see her in the queue. Mr. Whitaker, if you could come back. Ms. Drummond, it always helps if you push request to speak, so I see you on the board.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out, Mr. Whitaker. I believe that the capital budget includes the first couple of phases of Spenard Road, which is north of the section that you're most concerned about, but the design process is well underway for the changes that are going to be made to Spenard Road, and I promise I will keep an eye out for the kinds of changes that you're looking for. I, too, would like to have Spenard Road be much more pedestrian-friendly. In fact, I would prefer that pedestrians have priority, and cars have to stop whenever a pedestrian even gets close to the street, the way they do in the Seattle area. So I appreciate your input, and I will take it into consideration. Also, I would like to know from the administration how we get speed bumps into the queue for installation. There are a number of neighborhoods that have them. Okay.
I would actually suggest that we don't need to take that up as part of a budget public hearing, and really we're here to ask questions of Mr. Whitaker. So that doesn't seem to be a question for Mr. Whitaker, but thank you for those comments.
Thank
and
you
Mr.
for your
Whitaker,
comment,
thank
yes.
you for coming down tonight.
I don't see anyone else that wishes to be heard on the budget. I'm not going to ring the gavel, but that will close our budget. That will close tonight's portion of the public hearing on the budget. We will continue the budget public hearing at our next meeting on the 28th. That brings us to our last item on the agenda, item number 15, which is special orders, and that's a discussion about recycling and the status of the compost. I see Ms. Osiander putting her finger. I'd actually, those that wish to be heard, if you could put yourself in the queue, and I'll call on you. Ms. Osiander, go ahead.
My request to the administration is to go back to the ordinance that the Assembly passed with, I think, the first increase to the tipping fee. My memory is that after a resolution and discussion on composting, there was a request to the administration to provide us at least 2 potential sites of public lands that could be used for composting. I guess it would be my hope that, particularly since our composting facility was just closed, the Evergreen one, that the administration proceed with that. I still am hoping that some private entity may choose to take advantage of a low-cost public lands opportunity and move into composting. That was the commitment that I made to a number of callers, that I'd bring that to your attention.
And Mr. Abbott, you put yourself in the queue, but since that's a question for the administration, I'll ask Mr. Abbott to respond to that question. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Osiander, we recognize the commitment that was made, and we've intensified that effort recently in light of what's gone on at Evergreen. I didn't think we'd have to produce it as quickly as it now looks like we need to, so I expect you'll see something shortly from us. And in the next couple of days, we can give you a more specific timeline for that product being delivered. But we know we owe it to you and the community generally, and we will absolutely bring it forward as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Selcraig.
I would concur with Ms. Osiander. I think we asked for that information together a long time ago, and it would be great to have it. And I guess I'm also wondering, I've been contacted by a variety of people, and I'm wondering if there is a maybe not perfect but temporary site that the city could be thoughtful about trying to find. Some suggestions have been next to the recycle center on Dowling. Do we have a site that we could just get through the winter with? Because I think we're in a crisis situation right now, so I'm really interested in your thoughts. And I don't expect an answer on this evening, but I'm grateful that you're working on it. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I've gotten lots of calls regarding the recycling program, and it really has just rolled out, and I do appreciate Mr. Coffey's suggestion that we give it some time. But all the calls have been consistent, and one of the items that's listed is that people feel like their cans are just too big, and particularly small, elderly people are having trouble, and Mr. Coffey pointed out that he was having trouble moving them down. Yes, small and elderly. But the point is that they're cumbersome, and particularly for people who are older and may not be as strong as Mr. Coffey, they pose an important problem. And our solution has been to charge $8 for someone to get assistance, and I don't think that that's going to work. I think it's an unrealistic expectation for people to pay an extra $8 each week. So those are two things, and I talked to Mr. Abbott briefly before the meeting, and he suggested that the Assembly come up with solutions to these problems, but I don't think that we can do that without some staff support and some discussion. I would like to know if we've exhaustively looked for a smaller can that will fit this machine, and if we haven't, I would like us to look for that. So there was the issue of cost. There's the issue. Oh, and then the third thing. There's the size of the can. There's the $8 charge, and the third thing is I think there's some confusion, particularly for the new people who are now receiving service and whose bills have gone up significantly. I think that there's the assumption that the entire increase in the bill is a result of recycling. And it seems to me that we need to do just a little bit better job explaining that bill. to the public and explain to them that, in fact, the cost increase that we're looking at is not just a recycling cost increase, but reflects a long-needed maintenance and closure cost. And so I know you've made an effort to do that, but it seems like if we're going to keep rolling this out, in order just to have my phone not ring so often, it would be nice if we clarified that a little bit better for the public. So thank you.
All right. Mr. Birch, I would just note that trying to keep to our 2-minute time frame as members of the body.
No problem. 9F9, earlier this evening, AR 2008-242, was a resolution wherein the city recognized it had, I believe it had made an error. It said federal grant awards of $14.5 million from our federal delegation, congressional appropriations from 2001 to date for wildfire and hazardous fuels mitigation. Apparently, the interest accrual for those awards never was properly attributed to that account. It must have gone into the general fund or something. So anyway, there's about $484,000 that's being reassigned under that memorandum. And it was not that long ago that we were told that there was no money available to keep the woodlot going in South Anchorage, which is a prime concern of many of my constituents. And I guess I didn't bring it up at the time, but I would encourage the administration through Mr. Abbott and the folks there to take a look at what options we have to keep the woodlot open. The fact that we had $14.5 million in hazardous fuels mitigation, and there's another $500,000 available. I think we need to do that next spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Birch. Mr. Starr.
Yeah, I'd echo Mr. Birch's comments a little bit. Sue Rodman, in particular, is doing some communicating at the community councils where she indicates that that's the case with the woodlot closures, as well as the decrease now in funding for the helicopter. And perhaps a special mention would be put out there that we do have now funding, looks like for another year per the chief, to keep the helicopter in the air in the spring, and then also the woodlot. In following along with the other Assembly members' discussions about solid waste services and recycling in particular, I'm interested to know the progress based on the funding increases for the Eagle River recycling area upgrades. I thought there was a $300,000 improvement number set aside for that improvement as maybe for our area. And then sort of the fiscal health, and I know we spoke about it at the work session on Friday about a solid waste services primer. You know, it was mentioned tonight that the rate increase sort of covered the first year of wage increases, but, you know, sort of looking forward, you know, we had the houses falling in, and then now are we just totally comfortable with where we've gone with the rates? In particular, to look at continuing to attain other recycling sites. I know there was a lot of speak about Muldoon, and if we have a cash situation that allows future improvements, I'd like to have that solid waste services discussion hopefully before the budget ends. So, Sharon, are we on track to get information, or how do we best, did you hear what we said at the work session? Is that enough?
Yes. Are you asking about the questions that the Assembly has posed to OMB?
Some of them, and again, I forgot to ask about the upgrade, the $300,000 upgrade to the Eagle River facility, which I thought was part of it.
Yes, OMB is very quickly preparing responses to the questions that have been posed by the Assembly, and all Assembly members will receive responses whether or not they were the original poster of the question. They were almost prepared to answer about half of them tonight,
okay.
But about half of the questions, the easiest questions, will be answered tomorrow.
Have we got the care and closure accounting in that too, so we can see how that fund's building?
That question has not been asked yet. However, in the Assembly, Assembly work session, not scheduled for this Friday, but the one for next Friday, we are anticipating that we will explain where the status of that item is, as well as some other solid waste services issues, such as how much cash they have on hand, what is their year-to-date net income, et cetera.
Great. Thank you very much. And then the last question is, we're going to see the quarterly summary reports next meeting then, do you think?
They have not been prepared yet. The charitable contribution report has been prepared yet, and we prefer to deliver those quarterly reports to the Assembly all in a single packet, if possible. But if we miss our deadline, then what we might do is insert it in the Q&A packets that each Assembly member will receive in order for you to receive it quickly.
Well, it ties into the question again without belaboring the point. The budget to actuals compliance will relate into the question about the fund balance adjustment requirements too, in my opinion. So are we going to see them not next meeting, but in the space between?
I will ask Wanda to include that as a Q&A to answer you before the next Assembly meeting so that you don't have to wait.
Well, I just don't know how you interpret the question about the fund balance adjustment requirements. And I don't remember exactly what you left with as a question on the fund balance requirements and the balancing therein. And a lot of it's related to the overtime.
I agree with your point, and so we'll comply.
Thank you.
Mr. Abbott, I see you in the queue, but I think that was earlier and you don't need to be in. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Really quick, I just want to say I've been getting a lot of calls and emails like everybody else about the recycling program, and I just want to thank Mark Madden, the solid waste director, because he's been absolutely fabulous. At my invitation, he's been coming to community council meetings and talking to people about the issue, and he even came to my homeowners association's board meeting where we have 163 units in our subdivision, and 70% of them, I believe, are seniors. So thank you very much, Mark, for your help.
Thank you. Dr. Selcraig.
Just a quick happy birthday to Miss Whittleton. Happy birthday, Sharon.
I don't know what that has to do with recycling.
I think it's closure. It's closure.
Wow, rough.
All right, actually, let me, I just want to speak very briefly as to the garbage recycling. I agree with Mr. Coffey that we need to let this go for a while before we react too quickly. But the one thing I know as a person who is in the service area that we got the new cans, I think it's worth remembering that when we had the public hearing about recycling, there were a lot of people here that spoke in favor of recycling, and those that, some of whom have called me in recent days, really don't believe in recycling. They weren't here saying they didn't want recycling, and we responded to the public desire for recycling when we passed that. But I think one of the most common things that's misunderstood with people calling is that if they look carefully at the size container, they actually can save money over what they were paying before. It's just a question of choosing the smaller garbage container. And particularly with seniors, as a family of 4 who probably, I hope, produces more garbage than senior families of 2 or 1, you can go with a pretty small can and get all your garbage in there every week. And so when folks call and make some complaints, it's certainly worth inquiring what did they sign up for. But we have to let this run for a while, and there will be calls, but we won't really know how it's going probably for 3 to 6 months. So with that, Ms. Drummond is in the queue. Deprive me of the last word. Go ahead, Ms. Drummond, and then we're going to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for not jumping in before you. Considering that 3,500 households had containers delivered a couple of weeks ago, I only got about 3 or 4 complaints, and that was mostly from people who had not been paying attention to the notices that they'd been getting, telling them that this was going to happen. And in most cases, I was able to explain that having had one of these 64 to 96 gallon recycling bins at my house for the last several years, it has greatly reduced my garbage output. And I also appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to being able to accept that single 48-gallon container. And I also appreciate that Solid Waste Services came up with the biweekly option for those who really produce small amounts of trash, and that really saves you money. So I appreciate the work that's been done, and they have done good public outreach.
Okay. Well, I think that's everything. Is there a motion to adjourn? It's unanimous. We're adjourned.